around the Civic Auditorium and the Rodeo grounds, and so those are depicted here. If you've been coming to the workshops or looking online, this photo, this oblique photo, very fancy word, is one we've been using quite a bit. And this just obviously with all the colors off of it, so everybody gets a idea of where we're at. And I think it's pretty easy. Rodeo grounds here, Civic Auditorium, and Turtle Bay's over here, just to give you some perspective of where we're at. So this all started, of course, we received it's almost an infamous word now, the unsolicited offer. That just means we didn't ask for it, and it came in, and the partners that were proposing it, I think they go by D&D, Populous McConnell Foundation, K2 development companies in the Turtle Bay, and the council scheduled these workshops, and we've had a number of those. This will be the fourth, and we broke those into categories. The first that we discussed was really the Surplus Land Act. Everybody got an education on how we deal with land and excess land within city government, and we're controlled by this act. And essentially it just stands for the proposition that if we're going to declare a property surplus, that we have to go through an entire process to do so, minimum of 60 days unless it's exempt surplus, and key factors here that you can't really enter into any negotiations until this property is officially declared surplus after that process. And so we haven't been able to do any negotiations despite some of the information out there. There's been no negotiations whatsoever with the group, and so we are going through this process for the city council's purposes, and obviously to let the community provide input along the way. The next workshop, I'm sorry, I'm not linked here, so I apologize, but I'll pause for a moment. This is a Surplus Property Act, and I covered most of those elements there. And the one thing I'll add that you can see there's the intent of the Surplus Property Act really with the state of California is that if we have property that we're going to sell, maybe somebody out there with an affordable housing idea wants to come forward and could offer to purchase it. I think another key element on surplus property is that if you have surplus property and you do surplus, it doesn't mean you have to sell it. So that's one thing that the council could declare property surplus, and there's no obligation really to sell that property at the end of the day. The next workshop we had was really talk about planning, because one of the items of the offer was to make sure we completed a master plan. And we went through the various levels of plan, general plan being the overall, what is often referred to as the constitution of planning or development within a city. Specific plans, which are legislative in nature, and they cover a much smaller area. We have a few of those across the city. The most recent that has been discussed is the downtown specific plan, and it provides very specific policies and regulations associated with development in that area. And then a master plan here is really an item that allows for really robust citizen and stakeholder engagement. It identifies priorities. You define what you're going to build and what those amenities would be, and it provides a more definitive layout of that area and what could be built. And you can do a whole area. We've been emphasizing this. You can master plan an entire area, but you don't necessarily have any intent to develop the whole area, that you just want to make sure that you're looking across the whole area from a planning perspective. And then we just demonstrated across the country a number of areas that have been master planned, and obviously the ones that are up here on the screen are all big cities and are different than what we would do here, but it certainly gives you an idea of what a master planning elements might be developed if you did one of a master plan. Then we had a discussion just generally about the land itself. We went through a history. It was a brief history. We've put some additional information up there. There was a wonderful article written for the Shasta Historical Society about the acquisition of this land. It's very interesting. If you want to read that, it's on our website. We talked about the properties, how we acquired them. We talked about individual property analysis and what restrictions might exist on those. And then we talked about the facilities that exist there, the rodeo grounds as well as the Civic Auditorium. The council did ask about some information on the Civic Auditorium in terms of cost. So really what we did is we went back to the last year that we operated the Civic Auditorium, which was 2011, and then we did an inflationary increase to today. So these numbers are not going to be exact, but if we did that comparison, the operating revenues at the time were $587,000. That'd be about $905,000 today, and the personnel and operations and maintenance costs were in the neighborhood of $1.31 million. So it ran at a deficit of about $1.2 million, and that was covered by the general fund through TOT taxes at the time. And then of course we made the contract with Advanced Redding, and the city has not had a expense related to operations and maintenance since then, although we have had some capital expenditures required. And then also the question was asked, well, going forward, what would it take to actually maintain that Civic Auditorium into the future? And so over the next 10 years, we expect to spend about $5 million on that facility. So I think it's safe to say that if we were going to keep that into perpetuity, say the next 50 years, we could average probably $300,000 to $500,000 annually to keep that facility going and up to date and able to be useful. So that's just a side piece of information that was asked at the last meeting that we didn't have the answer to. This slide really just talks about the various properties that are owned by the city and how many acres in total. It's about 198 acres, and that is still represented by this picture here. And so now we're into the alternatives, and I'll go through each one of these fairly briefly, and I have one more slide that after this that I think is an important one. Obviously, alternative one is just take no action. We just stop here and have a stop and do no more, at least for now. Number two is to direct the staff to keep developing information, and so more of the same, if you will, maybe some different direction from council for some specific properties, or to focus on certain properties, but we just continue to develop this information and refine it even more and bring that information back to the council as it gets developed. Number three is that agree that the master planning of this area is a really important concept, but that we do it as the city and with direct city funds. And so we would develop a request for proposals. We would send that out. We would receive those proposals. The council would select a company to do the master planning for us. Then once that master plan was done, the council could determine what to do, which would probably be 2 to 3 years from now. Item number 4 is one that we haven't really discussed. I came up with this, I think it might have been Saturday, 1:23 p.m. And that was like, we're not the first city to enter into public-private partnerships and to do great things for our community. And so this would be an alternative that would, for now, direct the staff to go out and seek out where that's occurred, how they did it. Did they do it under the current rules and laws of the state of California? And if so, how was it accomplished and what did they achieve? And so that would be an alternative that we would spend the next 30 to 60 days sort of trying to figure out, how they built Levi Stadium as a for instance. And item number 5 is to begin this process. You obviously can't declare anything surplus today, but to direct staff to begin this process to develop the resolutions and whatnot necessary for declaring this property surplus. And just to repeat what I've already said is, if you declare it surplus, if you go in that direction, we would have another council meeting where you would adopt the resolution. That would be a full public meeting. Then you could adopt that resolution, which means we would send out the notifications as pursuant to the law, which lasts at least 60 days. After which, if no responses come back, then we would come back to the council, and there'd be another public meeting about what those next steps would be. And so there's many opportunities for the council to deliberate and to take public comment along the way. And then, of course, number 6 is really just sort of provide us other direction as necessary. So the slide that I think is important is, at least what I've heard from the council through all these workshops, is that when you're considering surplus properties and you're considering what might or might not be developed in this general area, what I've heard from the council is that The open space, the riparian forests, that's just off limits. What I heard from the council, and of course, this is just what I've heard, there's been no vote or anything else, but what I've heard is that the council has absolutely zero interest in developing or selling or doing anything with that riparian forest. That doesn't mean you wouldn't do some master planning through there. Do you want another trail? Do you want to enhance the trail? Do you want to put some park benches out there? Do you want to put wayfinding signs? Do you want to put in kiosk with information about the salmon run or whatever? But it remains in city property, and it remains largely intact as it is. If the council has different opinions about that, then that would be good to talk about and to describe to the community. And I've also heard, and we have some requirements from the state of California, that the riverfront here is also off limits. And that's where the boat ramp is. There's a trail system that goes through there that used to be a road. We have obligations to the state to maintain that property, to maintain those facilities into good working order, at least till 2040. And so, my belief is that property is off limits as well, so that wouldn't be surplused. And so I just thought that would be a good visual, because I know there's been a lot of concern and over particularly the riparian area where the floodplain is. But what I've heard the council through their discussion is if there's interest in moving forward at all, it's really looking at the areas that have already been fully developed, that have already been paved, that have already been disturbed. And so I just think that was a good visual. So, and I did that one on top of our communications team. So if it's a little hokey, it's my fault, not theirs. But I thought it was, it gives you the idea of I think where we're at. And that is the wrap. And so the next thing, if the mayor is in agreement, is we would allow the D&D team to do a short presentation. And then I think it would be time for public comment.
Councilmember Winter.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Staff.
I had a question too.
Mr. Tipping, when you presented the options, is there the possibility of a blend of options? Like, could you blend some of them, like
Absolutely.
4 and 5, or 2 and 4, or 2 and 5? What?
Yeah. If there's, I'm glad you asked that question. I failed to mention that. Those alternatives aren't all necessarily mutually exclusive. You could say, well, I like a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, and blend those together. That certainly is an option that the council can pursue.
Thank you.
I have a question prior to just one more question. Would option number 4 allow the city to pay for the master plan?
Well, item number 4 probably only takes a couple of months. And then we would come back to the council at that point and say, here's what we've learned regarding some of these other potential alternatives. And then the council could decide at that point whether you wanted to do our own master plan or whether you wanted to do something different. So yes, it doesn't preclude doing your own master plan. It just simply pushes that decision off for a little bit while we do some additional research.
All right.
Good evening. We're going to mix it up a little bit. Good evening, council members, city staff, community members, and especially to all the children in the audience. Thank you for providing these 4 community workshops for us to discuss what a Northern Riverfront public-private partnership can mean for Redding. The partners came together because we wanted to work together to facilitate a master plan for the future of the civic area. Our partnership is made up of the McConnell Foundation, K2 Development Companies, and Populous. We began the visioning process immediately with the 4 operators in the civic area. They include the City of Redding, who is there and will stay there, the Redding Rodeo Association, the Asphalt Cowboys, Advance Redding, Turtle Bay Exploration Park, and the Sheraton Hotel. If we're successful to move this idea forward, The stakeholders that are most important are the community. That's each and every one of you who is here tonight, and to those of you who are tuning in some way remotely. We consider your voices as important as ours or anyone else who's standing up here before you tonight. Eventually, this effort would require land commitment by the city of Redding. We don't know what that would look like today. We do know that big ideas generate big questions. They elicit hopes and fears. We're hoping that many of the questions would be answered through a community engagement and master planning process. We believe there are many safeguards in place through city planning processes, city staff, and most of all, the city council. We also believe that a successful master plan is more than a plan, and our team is committed to designing, funding, and constructing the community's vision to report back to you. We believe that vision would reflect Redding's vision for Redding. This is approximately a 10-year effort, and we know that this is a long and engaging process. We believe that we are committed to this significant responsibility that we're offering to undertake because we are rooted in our community. We think a very valuable addition to this idea and this offer is Populous, my colleague here, Michael Lockwood, who is local and part of a global team.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me back for the fourth time in person. It's really great to be here. If we could move to the next slide, please. I'm going to keep this especially brief because I think it's more important to hear from the folks standing behind me. But Councilmember DeQuisto, last time you gave us a very simple charge. Please go away and come back on one page, and this is the page. And I think you have a version of this in front of you, which is rethink this process to be more inclusive. And this is what we've done in 1 week, is listen intently, and I hope everybody understands that every time that we're up here, we're listening extremely intently. And if there's one thing that I've been trying to communicate over time is that a master planning process is exactly that. It's us listening, and it is about a lot of community engagement over time. And I understand that these are being discussed as workshops. This is not what a workshop would look like. I want everybody to know that when we would get into the master planning process, the design workshops that we have would be entirely inclusive of everybody in the community. And I've mentioned where we've done that before. I've mentioned the audiences that we've gained, 700, 800, 900 people in a design workshop. It's extremely enriching. I love the fact that people keep showing up. This is incredibly important. When you try to do something this big, we need everybody to provide input into the process. So this makes me incredibly happy to be here and see more people showing up again and again because it's that important. So a very brief message, but I want to turn this over to Bennett, Julie, and Lindsay. And I'm sorry, I don't know. Rick, sorry. Because I think we were charged with coming back and getting our team on the same page and continuing to evolve to address the concerns by the council, but also by the community, and we'll continue to do that. That is our charge, and that is our commitment to you. So with that, Bennett, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks.
Huh, I get the light. No, we're good. No, I don't need anything. It's great to see everybody again. The Ready Rodeo Association would like to thank the City Council for everything you've done for this. City staff, without you guys, this doesn't work either. And especially Aaron Resner for bringing this proposal to the public format rather than where it started kind of behind doors. This is very important to the public and everything else. This is a big deal, and I'm glad that this was the format we chose. We feel that all the partners and stakeholders have learned a lot about each other over the last few weeks, especially the last week. There's a lot of things that we've been dealing with over 20, 30 years and misconceptions and things, and you'll put us all in one room and say get together, and great things happen. So we've worked really hard over the last few days to do just what council asked us to do to get on the same page, and I think we did that pretty well. I believe we can all work together to redevelop the Redding Civic and Rodeo grounds for the benefit of the community, which that's what it's for. That's why we want to do this, so that it's a lot more accessible and easier for everyone to use for multiple events and not be bottlenecked like it is currently. So as stakeholders, the Redding Rodeo Association absolutely recommends that the council votes in favor of this proposal to move forward. I feel we have a great seat on the team to be able to ensure that the community is going to be fairly represented in the design for the rodeo grounds, and in conjunction with the Civic Auditorium. I think it's very important, and I think hopefully we can kind of host multiple events at the same time together. I just want to thank you for your time and effort that you all put into this workshop. I know it's an additional meeting every week, and I feel kind of like this is our new club. Next week I might show up and no one's going to be here, but anyway, it's been fun. I look forward to meeting many more times in the future as this project moves forward, hopefully. And like I said, I think this is just the beginning of a lot of great things to come. Thank you.
Hello, City Council and staff. I'm Rick Boudreau. I'm the president of the Asphalt Cowboys this year, and I get the duty to do this year. Great. But anyway, just wanted to start out by saying we are in favor of moving forward with this deal. Being that we are stakeholders, it makes us feel a lot more comfortable with this decision. I just want to start by saying, we want improvement down there. And we need improvement down there. So that's where we're at. And these guys, I think, can do that for us. We are excited to see the full potential of the property and make it a better place for our community and us. And it needs to be sustainable for future generations. So thank you.
Can we get the letter up? Yeah, we could have the letter up. That'd be great. Hi, my name is Julie Dyer, and I'm here representing Advance Redding, one of the key stakeholders. And I've asked Janelle to put the letter up that we all signed and sent to staff for council to review, because there was we actually all got together in a room to wordsmith this document to make sure we were actually, in fact, all on the same page. And I believe it's in paragraph 3, I'm not totally sure. But the one specific word that we added in there was that we trust. That we as the stakeholders in this letter, what we're communicating to you and to the community, even though the process has been rough and a little rowdy up to date, as maybe the stakeholder up here who has immediately not biggest, I'm not going to say that, what am I going to say? Most immediate effect to their apple cart happening in this process, with this conversation coming on top of our lease negotiations. The use of that word trust is actually, it's not light, that we're trusting that if you make a decision to declare this land as surplus, that you actually are going to take everybody's best interest, the community's first and foremost, rodeo associations, Advance Redding, Cool April Nights, who's represented here tonight, that is actually your goal and your intent. And so we say it without hesitation. We trust the process. And when I put this letter out before my board, this might be the fastest unanimous vote ever that we got. So it really is an unequivocal support for taking the next step forward. Thank you.
Hello. So as the last member of the key stakeholders, I'm representing Sheraton and Turtle Bay, and would like to kind of say the same thing as far as we are all excited to work together and to partner specifically with McConnell, K2, and Populous to design and reimagine the Northern Riverfront. So we would love for you to consider in declaring this land surplus so we can continue the process and do some additional public workshops and really, really dream big. The area is amazing as it is now, but we know that it can get better. We have tons of visitors that come through Turtle Bay and the Sheraton already, and we just want to continue to make it a great experience for them. And we really believe this is the right way to do it with the right partners. So, thank you.
That concludes our formal presentation this evening, but we're open for any questions.
Councilmember Winter and then Councilmember DeQuisto.
Thank you very much. I had a question, and I'm not sure if this would be for Mr. Lockwood or Alan Knott if he's in the room, but I'm wanting to know your thoughts about the the infrastructure bill that just passed this week, and how would a project like this perhaps take advantage of that? Is there a time sensitivity to that? So my concern with the RFP process is the amount of time it would take to develop an RFP, and would we miss out on potential funding? Just your thoughts on that.
Having not read the federal stimulus bill yet, I can't speak to the detail of what's in it, but I do know that our clients nationally are mobilizing to bring improvements to their cities. Every single client is mobilizing to do that. And so it matters to have a plan in hand. How are you going to spend that money? Where do you need those investments? You need to identify the need. And for us, again, I'm just speaking from the design point of view. I'm old enough now to have been through a couple recessions, and the last one was all about shovel ready. And you need to have plans in hand to come out of a recession to go do things and to go and seek funding. And so I'm just talking generally across the country that every client that we do have is digging deeply into the stimulus plan to find out how they can apply it. It's without getting political, it's infrastructure. Infrastructure can mean a lot of things. I think the key to success on this site is absolutely infrastructure, access, egress, parking, site improvements, open space, public realm. All of those things are actually outlined in the stimulus plan. So I think this is a great opportunity. Time is of the essence. The money doesn't last forever. So the sooner that we can get to a master plan that everybody loves, the sooner we can go and seek some of that funding.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember DeQuisto.
Thank you. I'm glad that everybody's on board, and my wife doesn't listen to me, but I'm glad that you guys listened to me last week. So at least somebody's hearing. My question is, and this is more of a legal one, the first document that gets signed, that you're proposing to be signed as part of this deal, is what you called an exclusive negotiating agreement. Leaving out whatever you call it, is it your intention by virtue of this agreement to have each of these parties who got up and said we're all on board be signatories to that agreement?
Good evening, Alan Knott, CEO of K2 Development Companies. Mike, great question. I would say that's really going to be up to the council on that agreement, on who you would like to be signatories to the agreement. Certainly we have identified who the development team is and have already preliminary identified some of the stakeholders. There'll be more stakeholders, I'm sure, that are part of this community. The community at large is a stakeholder, so that's really going to be up to the council on who you'd like to see signatory to the document.
Is it your intention to add these parties? I assume you're going to draft the document and present it to us if we move forward. Is it your intention to add these parties as signatories, or is that going to be up to us to do?
Yeah, I think as part of this process, we've heard you loud and clear that you want the stakeholders identified and be part of the process, not only verbally, but see it somewhere in writing, which this letter that is before you represents. And so the short answer is yes, they'll probably be listed in that document.
As signatories with rights and duties underneath it.
Yeah, part of the exclusive negotiation agreement, or this agreement that would actually have all the roles and responsibilities of each party that's identified within the document, whether that's a financial obligation or an obligation to serve as a stakeholder and be part of the process. And so a lot of those discussions to that detail have not been.
I understand it. And each of these entities would be able to participate in those discussions and input what they wanted or didn't want in the
Absolutely.
In the document. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're going to be key to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council prior to me open up public comment? All right. I am going to read off. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to read off. There are roughly 32 public comment speaker request cards, and so I'm going to, so that we can make sure that we do this in a timely fashion and respect everybody's time. I'm going to read up a couple of names at each time, and so if you guys could line up in order, like when you were in school, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. First up is Mimi Mosley, followed by Senator Johannesson, followed by Catherine McDonald, and then Brooke McDonald. Also, I'm going to apologize in advance for butchering about 70% of these names.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for this opportunity with the workshop. We really appreciate it. I wanted to share something about a few weeks ago. My husband and I spent 3 weeks in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's where we lived before we were married and have traveled back there quite a few times over the last 45 years. Murfreesboro is about 50,000 more than Redding is with people, and it carries a lot of the same similarities. 20 years ago, Murfreesboro was on the cusp of a tremendous growth. Radical opportunities were acted on with a result that catapulted that city to where it is today. They have a strong medical community, lots of great entertainment, great way of life, equestrian events, and a river runs through it. Kind of sounds like Redding. I believe Redding is on a similar cusp. People are fleeing California, and many are fleeing to Murfreesboro. But people are also coming into Redding, and I just desire so much for us to have something that draws them in and makes them want to be here. We have many strong circles in our community. There are circles that attend shows and events at the civic, circles who attend rodeo events, some that attend the arts and the symphony. But interesting enough, these circles rarely overlap. And I believe that this endeavor could allow those to overlap much better than we have in the past. We have something really great to offer here in Redding, and I just want to see it keep moving forward more and more. But we also must defend what is good as we build the future, including all the groundwork that has been made by the natives of this area. Redding Rancheria and the tribe, they have done so much for our community, and we need to take what's good and then add it on to the things as we build. I personally need the rodeo. I love the rodeo, and I love all the other events that happen in our community. And we need to do so much to help people as they're moving here or want to start businesses here, which we did. I believe outside city leaders are one day going to come to our city council and say, how did you do it? We will say we did it by defending what is good as we walked into the building of our future, and Redding is worth it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Johannesson. Followed by Catherine McDonald, followed by Brooke McDonald, followed by Arthur Garcia.
Thank you, Madam and members of the board. I don't think I'm necessarily an unknown at the moment, but they put this up here to give you some idea what I have brought into this area. The tens and tens and tens and tens of millions, you can't even believe it. I've been interested in this area of the auditorium for a long time. In fact, I got really serious into it when I was a mayor. And when I was a mayor, I didn't have these palatial places. This was up top by the jail. I don't know what, you can't believe how much it means, the history of this place. I have represented a lot of people. I represent, I think, probably some area of 13 counties and 37 cities. I was a Park and Recreation Commissioner for 4 years for the state of California. I have watched all of these things. What is it that people are looking for? What is it that we want? And I'm really interested sort of to explain to you, and I hopeful in a clear way, that what we are, don't hurt it. We are good. I know this gentleman in the shirts over there, they may be a little ruckus on times. We have the Rodeo Association. We have, this is what we are. Let's keep it.
That's right. Preach it, brother.
No, it's, I think the only reason I wanted to show you this is that the amount of time and effort legislatively, governor's cabinet, senator, you name it, mayor, chair of the supervisors. I mean, Parks and Recreation, like I said, for 4 years. We have, I was the commissioner for the state, but also I had a lot of travel because I also was a secretary of Veteran Affairs. I ran the Veterans Affairs in the state. And I can tell you, I don't want to be, because I could be very easily emotional about this. That area down there, I am not opposed to a study to see what can we do, what can we make it better. That is not the point. The point to me is I'm used to have a proposal brought to me and says, okay, what do you think of this? I never had a situation where somebody says, tell me what you want and I'll tell you what I'll do. This is not it. Bring us a proposal. Bring us a proposal. And like I said, I spent so much time on this thing. Ever since I was the mayor, I had a $6 million promise for some money to go with across the North Market Street, but unfortunately, they had to go by my property. And I was told in no uncertain terms, conflict of interest. So I backed over that one. The other thing we have to understand with this is part and parcel of a lot of things. For example, we have a shopping center up here. They were floundering because they didn't have proper access into town. I asked for and received $1 million for the study to be taken. I had the approval of the governor and we put through a bill. I wrote a bill that would put the new highway friendly coming over to us over here. That was about $26 or $27 million. I can tell you that it makes so much difference about what we do. And I'd like to tell you, I'm not opposed to this. In fact, I welcome somebody to come up with ideas different than mine. So far down there, I spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I also have committed for $7 million, 8 maybe more of the, can I consider, Madam Mayor?
I'll let you wrap up real quick, just
Thank you.
because I'm respectful of my elders.
I like the courtesy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can turn it off.
But the thing that we need to understand is that the soul is what we want to save. And that the reason for that highway, I wrote that legislation for that highway. I wrote it for one purpose. I wanted to get an easy access from 44 into town. But at the same time, I wanted to ensure as best I could to support the people in the other side of the river. This is a lot to this, and I know, but I just want you to know I'm not opposed to coming up with something as long as we understand that places like the Rodeo Association or the Asphalt Cowboy, I look forward to these things every year. That's what we identify us. This is what we are. We are not a huge metropolitan area, big time, no. Give me some bone, some meat on the bone. Show me what you can do. I raise holy hell. I am good at what I do. I can find money, and I'm already committed to a couple of $1 million to build for Turtle Bay. We are currently in study in Turtle Bay for the purpose of creating a wildlife reserve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your courtesy.
Thank you very much. Catherine McDonald, Brooke McDonald, Arthur Garcia, and then Jesse.
I'm glad I raised my daughter to be polite.
I think there's a stool. I think there's a stool right down there if you want to step on the stool or pull the mic down just so that we can make sure that you're heard.
Let me pull it down. My balance isn't good, so I don't want to fall off the stool. So I want to start off by saying that I've worked for my entire professional career as a writer and editor, and I'm very sensitive to language. And in that regard, on one of the slides, members of the public were identified as just stakeholders and not key stakeholders. And in my opinion, this is our city, and we should be as key as anyone else. And I guess I'm really sensitive to that because the city is proposing another project that affects my neighborhood, the Garden Tract. And there were so-called stakeholder meetings that didn't include a single member, a single resident of the Garden Tract. So just be careful about that word stakeholder and who's included and who isn't. And then I want to say the last 25 years of my career as a writer and editor have been writing and editing documents under the California Environmental Quality Act. So I know a lot about CEQA. I do want to say that I'm pleased to hear that the green space parcels will not be developed, but I don't have a lot of trust. Somebody else used the word trust, and I personally don't have a lot given my experience with this downtown zoning project. So the surplus, the regulations regarding surplus property require compliance with CEQA if, quote, the property would have significant values for wildlife, habitat, or other environmental purposes. I sent the city attorney, I'm an elderly person too, so. So I sent the city attorney, Mr. DeWalt, the regulations regarding CEQA, exemptions for surplus properties, and I should also say I've talked to a CEQA attorney because I want to see the open space protected.
Thank you very much. I should probably let everybody know there are probably going to be lots of people who have not spoken during a public comment time period, but each speaker gets 3 minutes. When the yellow light flashes, it's giving you a 30-second warning. When the red light flashes, your time is up, and I will do my best to be polite but timely.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. And I would like to say that everybody up here seems really nice, and all the people proposing this seem really nice and friendly. I have no quarrel with them as people. I'm sure they're well-intentioned. However, it seems to me like once the city discharges this land, nobody in the city gets any further say in how it's developed. The Rodeo Association believes, apparently, that the rodeo grounds will continue to be located there. But once it's private property, there's no guarantee. They could build they could build anything there. And I think that until we see an actual plan from the developers and the people proposing this project with actual concrete, the rodeo grounds are going to go here, the new civic center is going to go here, it will have this many square feet, it will have this much parking, we'll continue to have Cool April Nights there, we'll continue to have the fireworks there. I don't think it's very responsible of the city to just hand that land away to a private entity. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Arthur Garcia, followed by Jesse, followed by Winterhawk.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Garcia. I'm one of the leaders of the Northern California Wintu tribe. I'm here to represent my tribe. I'm here to represent Gary Rickard, which couldn't make it this evening. I am the cultural resource person for my tribe. I oppose this development. I say if you want to sell it off to private owners, why don't you give it back to the original owners? That is the Native Americans of this area. Right now, I'm a cultural resource monitor. And a monitor's job is watching over all these developments going on. The way they dig so deep, they're uncovering our people, they're uncovering our artifacts. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see all this stuff come up out of the ground once it's put in the ground. We put our people to rest in these areas. They are to stay in these areas, not be dug up, not be removed, not to be scooted over. So I'm just asking everyone here to take this to your heart this evening. Listen to your heart. Don't listen to this up here, because this up here, this is where the confusion comes from our minds. So I ask you to think with your heart, walk from your heart, and see from your heart, just like we do. And that's about all I got to say. Oh.
Thank you. Jesse, followed by Winterhawk, followed by Iverson.
Chumisenwi, Ilagatage, Chi'i, Jesse, Is Ilmawi, Hupa, Wintu. As an Indigenous mother, it is my mandate to protect the land on which my ancestors once called home. Between 1850 and 1900, life for Indigenous people changed forever. Along this riverfront is where the healing ceremonies took place, where our wild salmon was caught, smoked, and served. Acorn soup and mush was cooked in tightly woven baskets made of willow gathered along this river. Water births of celebration brought future generations, baby baskets made with the strongest of the willow to carry our futures. And even sacred burial ceremonies were held so our ancestors could make the journey to the spirit world. But settlers came in demanding our people to leave, as you do so here today. Promises of reservation lands to be relocated to, and treaties that would keep them safe. But greed from the land took over settlers' decisions. My ancestors were forcibly removed. Promises were broken, and treaties were never ratified. Forced to assimilation, laws that ban traditional and cultural practices were put into effort. Our children taken from us and put into government facilities like boarding schools, set up to Americanize our children. They were compelled to wear proper American fashion, to never speak our traditional language, to cut their hair and change their names so that America can accept them. But you guys never did. Our original tribal identity as the first people from this land is being erased, all for profit, all for development. This land was stolen land, and you cannot sell what is not yours. This is forever my home. Please do not repeat history. With poor management, corruption, and constant hunger for the land, how much more can you take? Oh.
Winterhawk, followed by Iverson, followed by Kevin Cry.
Hello, my name is Winterhawk Sage Rouse. I am Imali of the Pit River Nation, Wintu, and Hoopa. Every spring, me and my little brother spend days on ends on the river banks, helping our mother gather for willows and river sage for ceremony. We spend hours fishing for salmon with our grandpa, picking wild blackberries and listening to the bald eagles as they fly free. This land is our home. The water is our life. The fish and birds are our relatives. Please do not sell this land. It is our future. Oh.
Iverson, followed by Kevin Cry, followed by Michelle Radcliffe Garcia.
Chimisunwi. My name is Iverson. I am Pit River, Imawi, Wintu, and Hoopa. I also spend days on end with my aunt gathering willow and elderly berry for our clapper sticks. I am a fisherman because of my dad and grandpa. I grew up on this river. I want to one day to teach my children how to fish on our river. Please do not sell this land. It belongs to my children's children's. Thank you. Oh.
Kevin Cry, Michelle Radcliffe, Gary Cadd.
You know, it's interesting because I was sitting in the back and wasn't sure what I was going to say, what I wanted to speak on, and I was saying, should I even be here? And the opening speaker, Mrs. Mosley, talked about Murfreesboro. Ironically, and by God's grace, that's where my story starts in this being here. I was in Murfreesboro, October 15th, 16th. Going to move my family to Tennessee. Like many of you, and the community knows that we lost another really good family to Tennessee recently today. And on the way back, we decided maybe we shouldn't move. Maybe we should fight for Shasta County. Let's go to the school walkout on the 18th and see what they're doing. Went to a board meeting. In the last 5 weeks, I've inundated myself with what happened to Shasta County. Senator Johannesson, I love you. We've spoken before. Today, I'm so glad you said that. Because we're losing Shasta County, and we're losing it fast. I'm totally for growth and things happening, but it reminds me a lot of like the mask mandates. We all said, let's stay home for a couple weeks, flatten the curve. That's fine. We give up a little bit of freedom. Here we are 2-3 years later. Look what's happening to our country and our county. It doesn't even look the same. I remember Mr. Warren, when we spoke years ago about manhole covers, and I remember like it was yesterday, people were irate that we were going to spend a lot of money on customized manhole covers. And I'm thinking, oh, it's kind of nice. You walk down the street, you see a nice manhole cover. What I didn't realize is 20 years later, we'd be selling off possibly some of the greatest assets and landmarks we have in Shasta County. It's crazy to me. There's really no point to this other than I have to stand up. If there's other people that feel that we're losing our county, losing our city, losing everything, and not understanding why, I would really encourage you to step up, run for an office, send some emails, go talk to some people, and just say enough. Because I think a lot of us in this room really start to feel like, well, that makes sense, but if they do this, then what happens? What else are we losing? Because you're right. One of the previous speakers just said, once that's gone and signed, that's it. It's gone. We don't get that back. We don't get it back. It's gone forever. And if we don't start standing up for that stuff, we're going to look like Murfreesboro. Because you notice the pictures they had on that slide? Did you notice one of them? One of them said Cleveland. That's what we're doing? We want to be Cleveland? We want to be LA? We want to be New York? Again, I'm all for pushing Shasta County forward, making it better, making the city of Redding prettier, safer, better for our children. But if we want to be Cleveland, man, you can have Cleveland. I want Shasta County back.
Michelle, followed by Gary Cad, followed by Jake Mingus.
Hestum Neto Yet Waikai. My name is Walking North. I am Wintu from the Widemem tribe, not associated with the Redding Rancheria. Oftentimes we are forgotten because we are an unrecognized tribe, but we are right out in Shasta Lake. I don't know if any of you have seen the Cultural Museum out there. There are other tribes that may not be as visible as the Redding Rancheria, but we should all have a voice. I don't know if I would use the term stakeholder, but as I recall, we weren't offered to be on that letter. Our opinion wasn't asked for, and just like a couple other folks have just said, that once that surplus land is privatized, we will not have a say. Just like our Indian land here, all of California, all of the United States, once it was owned, we didn't have a say anymore. So I oppose this development, but at the very least, if it goes through, Native Americans, people from this area, indigenous people from this area need to have a say at the table.
Gary Cad, followed by Jake Mingus, followed by Greg Burgeon.
Madam Mayor, council members, staff, members of the public. To start off with, the council member DeQuisto brought up the signatories. Something that surprised me is when the letter was announced. I heard it on the news. I don't know if there's anybody in the public seen the letter yet. And considering the letter, the cowboys and the rodeo guys, that letter is half a page. There's an awful lot of legalese that ought to be in that letter instead of being half a page. Something to keep in mind when the city sold the property for the Sheraton Hotel, there were 3 different appraisals that were brought forward. One of them was for $1 million, another one was for $2 million, and one was for $7 million. And the $7 million one was McConnell's. So if that property down there at the hotel sitting on is worth $7 million, I would imagine the rest of the property is worth quite a bit of money, and that should be something that we, the people, should be looking at. I think it boils down to me. Since this thing has come up, I've rattled it through my mind and thought about it, and I think that before this thing goes too far down the road, that this ought to be taken to a vote of the people. I think the people, and the reason I say that isn't really so much myself, but when an issue comes up, I go to the people. I know people, all over the town, been here quite a long time, and start talking to people, wanting to know, where are they coming from? How do you feel about something? And I think that the vote of the people would be very necessary. And I think the cowboys and the rodeo guys, along with Advanced Redding, you need to be very careful, because that little letter that you've got, I haven't read it, but that letter you've got, I don't know, gives you a lot of pause for what's going on. I think I would be paying a lot more attention to what's happening. So I think I'll leave it at that, but I may be back again another time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jake Mangus, followed by Greg Burgeon, followed by Steve Cohn.
Thank you, Mayor Resner, members of the council, for hosting these meetings and inviting the community to come out and speak. I'll preface this by saying that our Chamber of Commerce has not taken an official position on this project, so I'm kind of choosing my words carefully tonight, but I thought I would just share some information with you. In January of 2020, I got an idea, which is always dangerous, but I was sitting at my desk and I thought, you know, I should create a document for my board to consider called Where We Stand, the Chamber's positions on issues important to our members and the economic vitality of the greater Redding area. And it was adopted by the board, and we know what happened shortly after January of 2020. So it's kind of been sitting idly by, and I thought this would be a good time to just kind of bring it to the attention of the community. It starts with the Redding Chamber of Commerce is a convener of leaders and influencers, a catalyst for business growth, and a champion for a stronger community. As an association of businesses organized to improve the business climate and contribute to the economic health of its membership in the greater Redding area, the Chamber is an influential business advocate. The voice of business is heard when the Chamber works with elected and appointed officials to promote policies that make the Redding area a desirable place to live, work, and visit. And it goes through our position on things like encouraging business retention and expansion, the role of government and economic development, public safety, transportation, infrastructure, and education, and then we get to healthcare. The Chamber promotes projects that increase the quality of healthcare in the community and assist in the recruitment of skilled physicians. Todd Smith is my board chair, and he couldn't be with us this evening, but he sent me this statement and with this project in mind. And from Dignity Health's perspective, since he's the president of Mercy Medical Center Redding, he says, any project that makes the city of Redding and county of Shasta more appealing to those from out of the area helps the medical community through recruitment of physicians and other care providers in the community, to the community. More providers will improve the health and well-being of the residents of the North State. Additionally, we talk about affordable housing and its importance, arts and culture, and the fact that it contributed more than $800 billion to the U.S. economy in 2019. And then finally, world-class recreation development. We believe that tourism will remain a significant driver of the local economy. The Chamber will remain committed to projects that promote Redding as a tourism destination. We will promote the development of world-class amenities and programs that have the potential to put our community on the map as the #1 river city in the western U.S. And I probably could have gone beyond western, but I've kind of got this friendly rivalry with Bend, Oregon, and I think we've got more secret ingredients than that community has to do something amazing here as well. So with that, I just want to commend the group that put together this unsolicited proposal and has dreamed big and brought this to all of you. And thank you for inviting all of us here to have our say.
Thank you very much. Greg, followed by Steve Cohn, followed by Tyler Dunbar.
Yeah, my name's Greg Bergen.
Gosh,
That's all right.
I warned everyone.
I used to be the vice chairman of the Wintu tribe. I'm also a Wintu and Yana Nosa, one of the last Yana tribes that functioned in this area at Turtle Bay. My family are buried at Turtle Bay in Indian burials along the side of this river, my family. And I think we know the history of the Indian people. We got cowboys and Indians in here tonight. But guess what? Who's the stakeholder still? The cowboys are still stakeholders and the Indians are not. So some things never change, you know? I'm still wondering when things are going to be inclusive to indigenous people and things are more transparent. You know, I also think that's a big issue in our country is things are not transparent enough. You know, we need to be at the table with future plans and not just kind of generalize. And so I'm wondering one day when we're going to stop profiting, you know, that bridge is built on top of burials. You know, the museum profits off showing our artifacts. You know, everybody profits off us. He talks about millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. How many dollars do the Indian person got? They're homeless still on the tracks with nothing, no land, broken promises, and Shasta County. So we know the history of Shasta County. I could sit here and talk about it all day long about the history. You know, and so I think what we need to do is start including Indian people at the table as key stakeholders, being how they're the First Nations people and this was their land. You know, there's more protected land for animals and plants than for the very people who walk this land. And so I'm wondering, when is that going to happen? You know, I'm hoping with a plan that everybody can be a part of the plan, not just Indian people, but all people. We're all two-legged people. Everybody needs to be included in the plan. You know, we're not Redding Rancheria. We don't have money. We don't have land. Our people still fighting for scraps. Government camp that was promised to be given back that was taken away. Unratified treaties. I mean, I'm not here to tell you the history of California. We all know it. Many of us know the history. But this is what needs to change in the future, is us to be a part of the future and not just wait us out until there's none of us left to come up here and speak against what's going on. Oh.
Steve, followed by Tyler Dunbar, followed by Stephanie Hughes.
Good evening, Council. My name's Steve Kahn. The bringing the other people into being on the exclusive negotiation agreement kind of may change what I'm saying, but I'm going to speak to it anyway. When these workshops were originally established, it was my impression that they would be an interaction with the public to determine how the riverfront property would be developed. As it ends up, my impression is that it discussed a lot of the technicalities of the potential sale. I don't think that fulfilled the public's desire. What I was looking for, and I believe a lot of other members of the public were looking for, was a plan of what was actually proposed. Even today, when they put their master plan, you know, it said master plan up there, but there was nothing that followed that was related to a master plan. Even individuals of D&D and populace admit they do not know what development would go on in that area, not even vaguely. However, they've requested an exclusive negotiation agreement, which would tie that property up for them for a period of time, a long period of time. According to them, their schedule, I think a couple of years at least. In the beginning of these workshops, Councilwoman Schroeder stated that considering what the public wanted that property to be used for was putting the cart in front of the horse. I think she's got it backwards. I think the public should be driving the horse. Here we are at the end of the workshops, and still we have no idea what the development would look like. And yet the development group wants an exclusive negotiation agreement signed. Hey, I'm excited about possibilities down there too, and their presentations have made my imagination run away with me. Who knows what it could be? But to ensure that we do this correctly, signing an exclusive agreement at this point in time is not doing it correctly. Why would we tie up a piece of property of that value and importance for years, limiting it from other proposals? I believe before we can possibly enter an exclusive negotiation agreement with this group or any group, we have to have a master plan. I believe the rodeo grounds need to be a major consideration in that plan. At this point, we don't have any idea. Also, if we created an exclusive negotiation agreement that would be in existence for years, what does that mean for the agreements that we would have with groups that would be leasing the Civic Auditorium and, of course, the Redding Rodeo Association? They couldn't spend a lot of money or modify the rodeo grounds to any extent with this whole thing being left up in the air. I urge the council to require a master plan be submitted by D&D and Populace or anyone else that's interested in the property before agreeing to an exclusive negotiation agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tyler Dunbar, followed by Stephanie Hughes, followed by Steve Williams.
Hey, thank you, council members, city staff, fellow citizens. My name is Tyler Dunbar. I was born at Mercy Hospital. I graduated from Foothill High School, class of 2006. And like much of my friends and fellow graduates, turned 19 in another city. And I want to ask you guys today why that is happening, right? We are losing our young talent here in Shasta County at an amazing rate. It mattered to me then, it matters to me now more as a father, as I look to create an environment and a community where my kids want to live, where my kids can live, where my kids can afford to live. And I think a lot of us in this room probably share that as a common thread. I think that property, since I've been alive, now granted that's a lot less than maybe some other people here, it's been underutilized. We all love the events that happen there, but can we do more? Absolutely. I don't think this should be a question of should we do this? It should be a question of how do we get this done? And the more that we talk about it, which is great, you know, we talk about inclusion. 12 of the last 13 years I spent with the Navy Special Operations out of the country, all across the country. And this place here is special. It's beautiful. We have a lot of talent here. We have a McConnell Foundation. I don't know if anyone doesn't know Shannon Phillips. She's an amazing woman. She helped raise me as a kid and filled in a lot of gaps for me. But all three of her kids don't live here. It's not because they don't want to live here. It's not because they desire to live in other places, but the opportunity for so many of us don't exist here right now. I'm also the director of a dental group, and I echo the Mercy president's comments. It's extremely hard to retain and attract any sort of clinical talent. It's hard, right? Because we don't have the events, we don't have the opportunities that, love you, Kevin Cry, but Cleveland does, right? I've been to Cleveland, there's some good spots in Cleveland, just saying. And I think we can do better here, right? So I don't think this is as black and white. This isn't as confrontational, I think, as it needs to be. It's amazing that we're all here. This is 4 meetings. Our entire council, I mean, you're volunteers essentially, and you all have families, and you all run your own businesses, and you're doing all of these things. We're all here together, and I think, like I said, it's more important to continue the conversation on how we get this done versus should we get this done. Thank you.
Stephanie, followed by Steve Williams, followed by Julie Buick.
Hello. It's nice to see the turnout. I'm glad that I heard about the 4th workshop in time to come, which was only a few days ago. I'm not sure it was publicized to the general community. I know some people who, the very fact that McConnell's involved is saying, oh, they'll take care of all our interests, you know, they do good things, but I think it's too bad that they're part of this. I'm reading the history of the West. I'm reading Wallace Stegner, and I'm reading how the West got developed and how many people were sold a bill of goods and got to the deserts and couldn't farm and got here. And you know, the gold rush didn't last very long. And in Colombia, one of the miners wrote, well, we finally found this nugget of gold. We went out and bought a barrel of butter because that's what was important. So I'm an elderly person now, and I'm new to Redding, and I love that I'm in Redding because I appreciate the natural environment. I love seeing the mountains. This is, please don't build on the mountains, you know? It does my heart good to run an errand and then come back and I'm seeing the mountains. So though, yes, I could say, oh, affordable housing. I do not want the banner of affordable housing tacked on to get some proposal through like this. Much more important is to continue to have this beginning of our intersection of cultures, looking at what's really important for the long term. And for an elderly person to be able to walk along a path and know that the path goes further down the river. It's incalculable what the importance of this is. So I'm not so impressed with the idea. I love that what is being done with downtown, which is more of a redevelopment thing. But to think that you take prime areas and do housing development, so what this whole thing feels like a big hodgepodge. There are many separate issues that need to be considered separately, like what is this civic auditorium and who goes there how often? And, you know, where could another rodeo grounds be if we wanted to use it for more environmental studies and appreciation? So I think each separate thing needs to be considered. So please have a city-run master plan and start with workshops. Don't just bid it out to somebody to do. Let's get together as a community like this some more. Thank you.
Steve Williams, followed by Julie Buick, followed by Misa Ju.
Hello, Mary Resner, City Council. The auditorium. My grandfather, Carl Williams, came here on a boxcar from the West. His family sent him out here because they were all dying in the steel mills. And they said, that's not a life for you, go west, young man. With an 8th grade education, he came to Redding. He ended up serving multiple terms on the city council. He became the mayor, and he was a dreamer. When I was a kid, I would ask him about growing up. He was born in 1899, and I would ask him, what was it like? You know, he wanted to live in 3 centuries if he could have made it to 101. And he never wanted to talk about the past. He had no interest in the past. He would say, Steve, the past is done. You can't change it. We can learn from it, but we can't change it. He goes, let's talk about the future. And he pulled up a magazine, and he had a picture of a flying car. He said, I'd rather talk about flying cars. I think that would be really cool. The auditorium is heavily in existence because of his efforts. In fact, he didn't have a middle name. His name was Carl A. Williams, and the letter A was assigned to him because he fought for and got us an auditorium. He wanted us to have a place where we could gather as a community. He wanted us to have a place where we could bring in major attractions of interest, of culture, of music. And at the time, the Cascade Theater was small. Civic Auditorium was built. And I'll acknowledge, several years after it was built, he recognized they dreamed too small. It couldn't hold a basketball game because you can't see both ends of the court. It couldn't hold a tennis tournament because only a few people could see the entire event. And he said, we dream too small. We need to dream big. And I appreciate that he fought for it. I grew up in the garden tract. I grew up playing around this place, riding my bike around this place. And I can tell you the McConnell Foundation and the other partners that have come forward with a plan, they're dreamers. And it takes dreamers to move forward. And if you stand still, you're moving backward. That's what my grandfather always told me. Keep your eyes on the future, do positive things, and dream big. And I really appreciate the dreams that are being proposed here. And I would encourage the council to let this collective group of people, it's not one person trying to make $1 million on some dirty deal. This is a group of our community fighting to dream big for the future and our kids and our grandkids. And I think you're on the right track. Thank you for these public forums.
Thank you. Julie, followed by Misa, followed by Lynn Fritz.
Hi, I'm Julie Buick. My thing has changed a little bit because I was glad to see that at least the riverfront and the wild areas are to be left wild. They shouldn't be sold, however, I believe. That would guarantee it, I'm assuming. But anyway, I also wanted to add, I looked up what surplus property, and I think they didn't mention the fact it says on a regular basis the City of Redding reviews its inventories of real property to determine what land is in excess of its city needs for foreseeable needs, in other words, in the future. Land that is no longer needed for public purposes. Now right there, I don't see how you can make this surplus property. That it's just completely against your own policy. in the last few years, our country, all over the country, we've changed. In the last 60 years, the economics have turned upside down. Very wealthy corporations are favored over people, and now you say affordable housing. Well, the people of Redding, a third of them households have $40,000 to live on in a year. A fifth of them live below the poverty level, which is $22,000 a year or less. The affordable housing is not affordable to them. And I think we're going to see that more and more and more. And also, these companies, these very wealthy companies are coming in, and I respect the fact that they want to do this stuff, but they are getting tax dollars right off the bat. They're getting public property at a very reasonable rate, or less, just very small. I was shocked to see how much they paid for the downtown property, and then the $20 million that they received to build the affordable housing. That isn't capitalism, that's socialism for wealthy people, if you ask me. But anyway, I really feel like we do need natural places, and if that isn't evident with our crisis in climate and everything else, we don't need to be developing everything. And we don't need a Disneyland on our river, and we don't need something that only a few people can enjoy. The Sheraton Hotel it's nice, but I wasn't for it because the people of Redding can't use it, most of them, and very few people can afford that restaurant. And I'm assuming that all that housing, there will be very few people that can afford it. There will be very few people that can afford all the amenities that might be proposed. So,
thank you.
Public land should stay in the public.
Thank you. Lisa, followed by Lynn Fritz, followed by Kimberly Johnson.
The K2, Populous, Turtle Bay, and McConnell Foundation Partnership are proposing a plan for the riverfront. It's not an easy plan to understand because it's being presented in various and even differing ways. So when we residents get together to share what we were told by one entity, there is some confusion. I followed the minimum. We were presented a vision because that was our interest and our questions that had very low impact. The river and riparian properties were forward on the riverfront plan, but there was no high-rise, another motel, and even though the riparian areas are not developed, they will change. Public natural spaces serve a purpose, and it is already appreciated and used by Redding as a whole, just as much as the event halls and motels are by the tourists. There is a balance of recreational, educational, community gathering, dining opportunities, as well as the running trails and the natural areas that we all enjoy. These properties are also where the river life, the animals, the birds thrive. In other words, the area we call the riverfront that area is for the river. It's good to have a piece of the city on the Sacramento River to be for the river. I noticed we're all on one page now, group. They are missing the voices of the people who speak for the river and the river life. And I don't mean just one indigenous voice, but many voices, more than one voice. You may not believe in that kind of thing, but I have learned that they have a historical, long obligation to speak for nature. Their voice is important because otherwise you do not understand the effect of the building in other areas on that property. It will It may not be developed, but it will change the natural areas. I support a plan that includes an environmental impact study right at the beginning. That is a major concern of mine. I know this is a site of massacres. I know there are grave sites here, land, and you heard it tonight, lands with human remains and cultural artifacts are protected by law for a reason. It is the right thing to do for these places to remain undeveloped. And I remember former Mayor Julie Winter reached out to the indigenous communities with apologies for past wrongs. I ask the City Council to consider this. In moments like these is where you back up your words.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Fritz, followed by Kimberly Johnson, followed by John Truitt.
I want to express my admiration and respect, appreciation for being able to come together, to have the process, and to be able to participate in the process and inviting the community into that. That's not always done around the countryside. So I deeply value that. One of the things that speaks to me about this particular time in our history as a community and as our nation is the tension that is present. And my hope is by doing a process together that we can bridge those differences and create a place where all that have something to say can participate. I'm getting to know K2 and Populous through their affiliation with McConnell Foundation. I've known the McConnell Foundation and witnessed their work for more than 25 years. And what speaks to me is about oftentimes in projects like this, they invite people, us, into the process. They look at those who are trying to create something that gives back to the community or enhances the community, enriches the community. And that's where they put their energy and their finances. They're a philanthropic organization that works to benefit others through donating of funds. But they're very conscientious about how they go about that process. I've been in meetings where indigenous communities were brought in for conversation. So I see them as very relational. This process that we're in right now is very relational. We're trying to give opportunity for all to be heard. And part of that relational practice is being able to shape the future, what transpires, what happens, taking into consideration all that will be impacted. That's a rare opportunity to be able to have that experience. I think we have that because we have a philanthropic organization that is moving us into that possibility. As an example, I think of the Sundial Bridge. Highly opposed at the beginning, but that art, Santiago Calatrava, the architect, the engineer, the artist, bridged a gap. And that has become a central focus point in our community that brings people together. So when I see their work in all its different expressions, I trust that they have the highest consciousness, the best practices, a way of bridging groups and creating change that's helpful for all that are considered, even considering the trauma and the losses of the past and helping to bridge and heal those. I've witnessed that kind of consciousness from them. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Kimberly Johnson, followed by John Truitt, followed by Richard Gallardo.
Good evening, Mayor Resner and council members. My name is Kimberly Johnson, and I have lived in Redding for just over 10 years. I'm an employer to a rapidly growing staff, a mom of 5 kids, and a wife in this community. The word legacy has always carried a significant weight, not only in my mind, but in my actions as a friend, a mother, and a community leader. It is my belief that one's legacy is reflected by the impact they have made in their home, their community, and the world around them. My father was a World War II veteran who was 59 years old when I was born. This gap meant all I've ever known is working to bridge an understanding that everyone has a different perspective on what it actually means to make one's community better. I've attended 3 of these 4 workshops. Thank you for hosting them. And the common thread that I've heard from every single person standing here is a deep value for this land. Yet instead of this common ground being at the center of the table we are sitting around, we are focused on our differences in a plan that is yet to be determined. My office is just walking distance from this potential development, and currently the only time I am there for work, the only time I am there is for work lunches and the occasional dinner at Mosaic. A combination of safety along the river and a lack of frequent events that are financially available to much of our public. Thank you to the Redding Rodeo for always making the rodeo grounds and the rodeo events financially accessible to our entire community. Leaves this area with so much potential, but currently void of a diverse community engagement. I believe in populist K2 and McConnell's ability to design a space that will honor the incredible history of the rodeo, the ancestral lands of our indigenous peoples, protect the wildlife along the river, and allow us to continue enjoying community cornerstones like Cool April Nights and the fireworks display. I have no idea what this will look like, and based on my understanding, neither do they. I am clearly an optimist, but not a naive one. We trust but verify. We proceed one step at a time with appropriate contract language in order to mitigate risk. So when an experienced team such as this one are asking for the community's input and are prepared to invest the capital to create a very clear plan while assuming the risk of what follows, I believe we owe it to the potential legacy of our community in order to fully understand exactly what it is we are saying yes to. So for today, they have my yes to this first step in order to allow us as a community to make the fully informed decision on the proposed development plan for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Truitt, followed by Richard Gallardo, followed by Radley Davis.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having us here tonight, and thank you for these workshops. We appreciate it. I'm John Truitt from Viva Downtown, Redding. Viva Downtown is the Main Street America organization here in Redding, and we at Viva Downtown support master planning and development of the properties that we've been talking about. We at Viva know that this is first of many tasks, and that these tasks are going to last a number of years. We've been working in downtown for about 20 years, and so when I hear that there's a window of opportunity that's 10 years, I say, wow, that's an incredibly short amount of time to make the changes that this community is looking forward to. It's going to take a long time. And we know from experience that inclusive, long-term commitments and partnerships based on honesty and trust can create some terrific outcomes. And we think there's some amazing possibilities that can come from a master plan and development of this area. Of course, we're adjacent, but we're not really connected as downtown to the properties that we're talking about. So we're also looking forward in ways that this property can be better connected to the rest of the community as well. We found the people that have brought this plan to you have been trustworthy partners of ours for many years and in many projects, and so we're encouraging this idea, and we hope we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard, followed by Radley, followed by Robert Trigar.
Rich Gallardo, editor of Shasta County Citizen Journalist. The struggle that these Native Americans have with this land is truly amazing. I could not imagine what it's like being in their shoes. I hope by next meeting, this council will put together on an agendized item to vote to put one of them on this stakeholder group. Yes. Yes, one of them needs to be on the stakeholder group. Let's see if you have the boldness to do that. We need to keep these lands in public lands. That very good presentation I saw last week regarding the history of the land, I believe it was the Dutras and the Bentons is the name that come to mind, that donated the land to the city for public use. Okay, we've already insulted the Native Americans by taking that land from them. Let's not insult the Dutras and the Bentons by putting that land in private hands. Needs to stay public. At least the Native Americans can have some say in what happens with that land as citizens and members of this community. Remember, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom to protest, freedom to speak, freedom to carry weapons, to protect yourself on public lands. None of that, all that can be taken away at a whim if that land goes private. I was the recall chairman of Recall Shasta prior to Alyssa taking over. I stayed in close contact with those folks. I helped them to include training and consult for election laws and the procedures for collecting signatures, and look where we're at. We got one of them to recall. Trust me, the other two are not safe yet. However, I'm offering my expertise, my experience as a Recall Shasta supporter and organizer to anybody who thinks they need to recall a city councilman. I will offer my services free of charge. And I can help you make it happen. SCCJ, that is SCCJ at protonmail.com. You get a hold of me, I will help you start a recall against any city council member that does not do the will of the people. Happy to do it. Have a good night.
Bradley, followed by Robert, followed by Kayleen Sick.
My name is Radley Davis. I'm Pit River, Wintu, Maidu, and Miwok. Rolled with Pit River Tribe. My mother, she's Winnem and Wintu from this area. I'm here to talk about the unsolicited proposal to purchase public lands by K2, Populous, McConnell Foundation, and Turtle Bay Exploration Park. With this process, the 4 workshops, this last one included in that as presented, there is no way the community would have real binding input if the city council votes to move forward and provide the partners with the exclusive negotiations. There would be no mechanism of public accountability because it would no longer belong to the public. It would belong to theirs. It would be private owners. Honestly, these workshops provided biased information, not the real pros and cons of a project. The 4 workshops, they have proved to be inadequate in providing a voice and real input from the community. Instead, they provided mostly a one-sided promotional infomercial for the project. The workshops did not provide me a feeling of confidence that the community or you, the city council, can make an informed decision about whether it is good or not. The emphasis has been on how the council can do this, and very little conversation about if the council should do this. All the presentations seem to direct the council to privatize the people's public lands. Before considering whether or not to hand over public land to private developers, there really needs to be a real environmental impact study. Where are the state fish and game representatives here? Where is the Army Corps of Engineers? Where is Caltrans? Where are the tribes and tribal organizations? We need to hear from all of them before there is any more to give property over to developers who claim they have a plan, but they have no plan. A complete assessment needs to be done before any deal is done. I'm specifically concerned about the existing protections for the riparian rights and how they are being compromised. The adverse impacts to the ecosystems and the adverse impacts on the wildlife. And more importantly, I'm very concerned about the adverse impacts to tribal cultural resources in the area. You've heard about the burials there. Just this year, we buried more family there right across the river. That whole place is burials and villages and campsites. So I agree. If you want to give the property away, give it to the tribal people. If you don't want to give it to the tribes, make it a cultural easement in perpetuity.
Thank you, sir. Robert, followed by Kayleen, followed by Robin Grissom.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, and my fellow residents of Redding. I don't really have anything prepared, but basically I agree with the vast theme of what everybody's been talking about tonight, is that what we need to do is we need to keep those lands public and also give consideration to the native peoples, which was a wild card that I hadn't even heard about until I showed up here tonight. So I simply think that we should be really careful before we jump off the cliff, because to use the metaphor, I don't think we're going to have any more luck with holding up a sign that says help than Wile E. Coyote did on Saturday morning cartoons. So just think about what you're doing and be sure and keep in mind the long view for the next generation, because as I said the last time I did this a few weeks ago, that even though I didn't have that much of an opportunity to do so with my mom and dad's grandchildren, one of the great things about it when they were younger was that they wanted to come up and see my mom so that Grandma and Uncle Robert could take the kids to Turtle Bay, and we made some pretty good memories, and I even managed to survive my mom and dad's grandchildren being teenagers, as if the gray hair wasn't enough of an indication. Anyway, let's just keep the lands public, and if we have to do a public-private partnership, fine, but just be careful of what is happening, because you're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing this for the generations that come after you. Just think about that. And as a bit of an aside, when it comes to the Civic Auditorium, some of my earliest memories of that is that we used to go there to watch the professional wrestling matches, but I wouldn't exactly say that would be some time ago. But let's just say that those of you who are familiar with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his maternal grandfather was Peter Maivia, and that's how long ago that was, and it made some pretty good memories, and I'd like to pass on that idea to be able to make memories for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Kayleen? Followed by Robin Grissom, followed by Jonathan Freeman.
Okay. I am going to use this door. Okay. I wanted to be taller.
Me too.
Yeah. So, I'm Colleen Sisk. I'm the chief of the Winnemem-Wintu tribe on the McCloud River that comes all the way down through the Sacramento. Our river joins and goes all the way to the ocean. And as you know, this area has had a very horrible beginning as far as how it treated the indigenous people here, which was my grandmother's mother, that era, not so long ago. And this area is probably one of the worst massacres that happened in the entire state. From Turtle Bay Fish Camp, one of the largest fish camps, goes all the way down to past Knighton Road. And our history begins with you there. And being paid, that's how some of the people made their living, is killing Indians here. Since there wasn't as much gold here, killing Indians was more lucrative and took place. And my grandma always said, we're still here because some of you guys were bad shots. Not that we weren't shot at. So the opportunity here, you know, we've already lived through Turtle Bay and all of the misguided information that happened during Turtle Bay, which included, oh, you'll get free passes, that they didn't say it was just for 1 year, and that we were going to get a roundhouse. And we got all the elders together and got that approved, and you don't know what that means to do that. And then they didn't do it. We don't have no roundhouse. We're roundhouse people. But we didn't end up with that. We thought that was an opportunity, that this was going to happen, and it did not. And so we have a lot of broken promises from the 1851 treaty to the 1941 Act of Congress when Shasta Dam was put in, and we have no economy. After how rich this state is, the Winnemem Wintu people are not even recognized now. It's a shame. It's a downright shame, you know, that we have an apology from the city, but we have no real commitments. So right now, that land, it should be for the fish. We should be a fish state. We should be a salmon stopping place, and it would be better for the river, it'll be better for all of the people, and better for the water that we're shipping to people that need drinking water. So the Winnemem Wintu people are opposed to this project right now, and hopefully we'll be stakeholders in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin, followed by Jonathan Freeman, followed by Kathy Hill.
Hi. My name is Robin Grissom. I've lived here my entire life, and I've always loved what Shasta County is. My daughters are Pit River and Wintu, and this is their land. It's an area full of culture, nature, and community, but I am watching that slowly disappear. As time goes on, it seems as though the city wants to continuously grow, build, and develop, all under the guise of making it a better place. Yet it's obvious that it's only becoming a better place for the businesses, the developers, and the people profiting from this new growth. The top of the pyramid. What is being forgotten or ignored is what this county is made of: culture. The Native communities are yet again being ignored. In a city that publicly announces that they want to acknowledge the Indigenous people and take the steps to acknowledge the wrongs that have been done for decades, is yet again proposing to take their land. The ability to gather, weave baskets from materials that grow by the river and pass on traditions, you want to take that away. Yet, you profit from the admission of Turtle Bay, where you marvel at their relics. Nature and environment are being ignored. Habitats, migration, and food sources. The eagles that are so important to the community will leave if their food sources are gone or their habitats disturbed. The pollution and soil erosion that will occur from the building. Do you care? Do you understand? The community is being ignored. The people that live here are not business owners, not all of them. We are normal, lower to middle class people. We want to sit by the river in peace with our families. We want to have places that are not crowded, overdeveloped tourist traps. We are here because we don't want to live in a big city. Shasta County is not Los Angeles, and that is something we should take pride in. If you continue, this will be another concrete jungle that has to purchase water from other places that reeks of pollution and has no culture. If you care about making this a better place, then focus on what's already here. Beautiful rivers full of wildlife, history, culture, and people who respect the land. Quit trying to profit from something that should be left alone. Quit trying to turn this beautiful place into a big city. I find it very disheartening to know that there are people that can sleep at night guilt-free knowing the harm you are potentially causing an entire community. And I would like to end with this. If anyone in here would be okay knowing that your family members were dug up, then we have a much bigger problem.
Jonathan, followed by Kathy Hill, followed by Matthew Wilson.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your service. Important decisions like this seem to come up more frequently these days. The Council feels it is critical to dedicate the time necessary to fully understand what actions can be taken, what actions the citizens would like to take place, and how we can best utilize these city assets for future generations. These are Mr. Tippin's words on the workshop website. Have 3 infomercials been enough? Have 3 sessions with a heavily biased lean on how the city can do this rather than if the city should do this, has that been enough? This is not some little, back lot that the city owns that we're talking about. This is the center of the city. This is the center of our county. This is land that has incredible value, not just economically, but socially and culturally and spiritually, and beyond people, ecologically. Declare it surplus? Does it meet the same requirement that the other properties met when the city's listings was made in April? Where's your planning commission in this decision? This is a rushed process. Can we even call it a process? 3 infomercials with a little public comment taking place during the deadliest months of the pandemic? Our hospitalization rates at their highest? The hospitals have been busting at the seams. Do we really know what citizens would like to take place? Many are just learning about this in the last couple of weeks and are trying to make sense of it all. Why would the city want to sell our public lands? The community should be on the top of the org chart. They should have come first. These are days where public trust with government and those with money and power are at its lowest. And this thing that might be called a process has all sort of room for doubt and distrust. Just last week, the Cowboys were here in full force because they did not trust what was being presented as a process. Apparently that changed, something changed their mind, and now they're in support. And we're happy for them because apparently they got exactly what we're asking for, but not just for us, but for the whole community. We can assume that they were able to get a clear picture of what is actually being planned. We can assume that they now feel that they have real input in what will matter and what will make a difference. That is what we're asking for everyone. The developers have told us that there is no plan, but then they share their plans. Now a hotel has come up this week. Affordable housing, then no affordable housing. What are we to believe? What's really being planned, and how are we community members supposed to decide on what we'd like to do if we don't know what's going on? And I think what we need to do is really take time. There's a process. We need to engage our equity program, our equity department, to come up with a meaningful, inclusive way to include community voice. And if you decide to declare it surplus, then you better have a heart-to-heart with the Win2 people, because there's some serious reckoning that needs to happen in regards to their continued erasure, dispossession by local governments and organizations. So I thank you very much. And I know it's a big decision, and I really appreciate the care and consideration that you all give. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, followed by Matthew Wilson, followed by... Are there 2 Kathy Grissoms in here? You're also Kathy. Okay.
Wow. This is a toughie. I'm Kathy Hill. We've lived in Redding since 1997. And I think we could do this. I really think we could do this. But we're going to have to do better. We've done cool things in the past, and it's such a lovely place. But we've stumbled a little bit and missed some opportunities. The planning process, wow, that's going to be tough. I'd like to bring up 2 examples of how we've taken some property, done some cool things, but accidentally turned our back. Let's think about the area on the river trail where the Arboretum exists now, and the Turtle Bay has created beautiful gardens. They're beautiful gardens. They're fabulous. But there was a rotary bench right there on the river trail, and it's where we all first saw the poppies on that area that's now the garden. And now that bench faces a chain link fence that's the back of the maintenance shed in the Arboretum. So unfortunately, we imagined some really awesome access to our beautiful spaces, but we accidentally forgot to, not turn our back on those spaces. When the Sheridan went in, the 1 mile loop that goes past the river and the eagles' nests came around and headed back towards the Sheridan, and it became a lost jumble there. The idea of being able to use that space and enjoy it it became confused when we stuck the Sheridan parking lot right in the middle of the river trail. So I think we could do this, but we're going to have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, followed by Kathy, followed by Mercy Kravitz.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's good to be here tonight. I want to be clear, I'm squarely in support of moving forward on this step of the plan. I wanted to just make 2 points based on some of the conversations and comments made tonight and the presentation. Number one, I've advised and been involved in projects as large as this, and I have mad respect for the groups that are coming at this stage in the process. This is the very tip front end of the process. What they could have done is come with a master plan, and then we would have had comments on the opposite side that says that nobody was considered and they were just being handed a master plan. This is a lot of work that is going to go in, and I would invite the community to get really involved in this process, because this process is a long one, and it's going to take time. So on the flip side, people will be talking, why isn't it done already? And I think that in this, I think it's important to remember from my experience that at this stage of the process, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of involvement for people to be at the table if they're going to be. That's the first one. The second one about our community is I was always taught by my father that it is a lot easier to steer a car if it's not parked, if it's even moving just 5 miles an hour. What I see in this process right now is that we're not stomping on the accelerator and zooming the car off. We're literally just getting the car moving, and that allows the process to be steered as they go through the conversations in that. So number one, I think that we have really qualified people coming to the table. We have qualified stewards of this community coming to the table, and I think that the people that can be involved in this process can shape it and make it the great place that it can and should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kathy, followed by Mercy Kravitz, followed by Carrie Ann Foster.
I just want to clarify what I think I heard Mr. Tippin say, because I want to report back to the environmental organizations I belong to. Did you say that the riparian open area will not be sold or developed? Is that final and absolute truth?
I think that you can probably get a handful of nods.
Yeah, I look to the council because that was just what I see. I don't have the power to make that vote, so that's why I turn, and if you see a consensus nod of heads, then I think that would be an indication.
Nodding your head means it is a fact.
It's not an official vote, but yes.
It's not an official vote.
That is something we have continued to echo lots and lots, so I appreciate that you brought that up and asked the question.
It's a fact?
It'll come up for a vote, and you can probably bet a lot of money that the vote will be in favor of keeping it, doing nothing with it.
No matter what they
You've now heard from there's at least 3.
Yeah, maybe I'll just, it's a very good question, and it's not agendized. Legally, the council can't take a vote on that. But everything I've heard from the city council through these workshops and everything that I know in terms of a process moving forward, the land that is considered the riparian, say east of Turtle Bay and from the Sundial Bridge east, will remain in city ownership and will not be developed.
Okay.
We all nodded on camera.
Okay. That's what I'm going to report back.
Thank you. Mercy Kravitz, Carrie Ann Foster, Tanessa Audette.
Hello, my name is Mercy Kravitz. Alagata Chi'i Medesiwal Pimiwal Chi'i. I am Winnemum Wintu Medesi Pit River. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of my ancestral homeland that was unjustly taken from my ancestors through the Cottonwood Creek Treaty of 1851, which relocated my ancestors to the north side of the river. However, once my people were removed, the treaty was not ratified. This left my ancestors homeless and at the risk to the genocidal actions of the settlers and the unjust policies of the time. Between the 1850s and the 1880s, the Wintu population dropped from more than 20,000 to only 454. Sadly, this information is often controversially ignored and excluded from the overall narrative regarding the land. Yes, this very land we speak of today. And sorry I'm choking up, it's just like makes me emotional.
You're doing great.
Thank you. It's a miracle that I stand here today as a Wintu person. And this location holds much cultural and sacred significance to my people. I believe that the most just action in this situation would be that if the city truly considers this land as surplus land, that it will be rightfully returned to the unrecognized Wintu people. In the word of Wintu ancestor Norel Putis, and hopefully I said that right, will there ever be justice for the Wintu? Land back. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff. In what seems like a lifetime ago, after 2020, I had the opportunity to be part of the vibrant cultural gathering place that is Sundial Bridge Drive and experience the life and the wonder of the Sacramento River. What I feel like I've heard this evening is continued opportunity for our community members to be heard, for our Indigenous community that is often overlooked to be brought to the table and to be an inclusive part of our decision-making process, opportunity to provide equitable and affordable housing to our community, and opportunity for job development, not just for today, but for the future of our workforce. We have nothing but opportunity in front of us. So I just want to thank you for your time today, for the ability for our community members to come together and freely express their thoughts, and I encourage you to move forward with open hearts and open minds as we continue to discuss the opportunity for a beautiful master plan for our wonderful community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tanessa Audette, followed by Rebecca Landron, followed by Ronian. Really sorry.
Good. Yes. My name was easy, though. Good evening, City Council members and Mayor Resner. Thank you for letting me speak tonight, staff. I moved to Redding 8 years ago with my husband and my 3 children from Los Angeles. And we wanted to come into a community to raise our children that made space for time and family, for balancing work and fun, and not a lot of traffic. So this has been a great place for us to grow, for our kids to play sports and us to be able to work and get to their games. When I heard about the Riverfront project with K2, McConnell, Turtle Bay, Populous, my first question was, who is Populous? I've seen the work that K2's done developing downtown. We know the beautiful spaces that McConnell and Turtle Bay have created for us to enjoy, but who is Populous, and do they care about consciously developing Redding? And what I found on their website and from some of the displays that they've showed is that they do brilliant design, and a quote on their website states that we design the places where people love to be together. And I think that is exactly who and what Redding and this enormous under-imagined space needs. When I go down to this area, it's to be with my family at concerts or bike rides on the trail, connecting with friends, meeting people, out-of-town guests at the bridge. But what also happens is I have to leave a lot of times to eat, and when a friend stops through town, I have to make the decision to either show her the amazing bridge or meet up for a quick bite to eat before she continues her journey, because I can't do both. Currently, we have a civic center and a rodeo. I know those spaces can be combined, and we can have a destination for the everyday Redding person and the visitors coming to see what smart, innovative, and integrated design looks like. They come for the bridge, but we hope they stay for our environment that we create. I was just in Bend, and they do have a great space along their waterfront, but they don't have a bridge, and they don't have Turtle Bay and connected walking trails. I think we have a huge opportunity to build something that is unique, that will be designed with us in mind, and uniquely and beautifully Redding. During my class year with Leadership Redding, 2018, best class ever. We imagined a lot of things, and everyone that we spoke to on every program day all had an idea of what they wanted to happen in the Riverfront and in Redding. And so we ourselves as a class imagined what the city that we wanted to give our kids, and we wrote the City of Redding's vision and mission statement. And so when I imagine the Riverfront project, I can't help but see that that vision is coming to life. That statement said, Redding is a thriving, safe, and vibrant community known for its innovation and quality of life, a city where businesses prosper, government is responsible, and our abundant natural resources are enjoyed. Our mission is to enhance Redding's livability, prosperity for current and future generations. And I think these partners in this project completely align with that vision and mission. I ask you to say yes to the future of Redding, say yes to this offer and these builders and community partners, and say yes to designing places where people love to be together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebecca, can you say your last name correctly so I don't butcher it?
Ladrón de Guevara.
You said that beautifully. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Resner, City Council. You already heard me last week, and I'm here again. I'm also president of Win2 Audubon, which is the Audubon chapter of Shasta County. But before I speak on behalf of Win2 Audubon, I just want to elaborate a little bit on, all of you heard last week that I recently moved here from downtown Los Angeles. When I decided to move to Redding, I could have moved anywhere. I'm a software developer in the manufacturing sector, so I could have gone anywhere. Paris, Bend, Cleveland, New York, anywhere. I chose Redding because Redding was the most unique city I have ever been to, and I've been all over the world. So the choice was not a hard one, and that is why, as soon as I moved to Redding, I wanted to get involved, and already as an Audubon member, I began getting involved, and that's why 6 months later, I became president. So, and here I am, and Redding is a unique city that has a nature just has an unthreatened home here, and I hope it stays that way. So, as Win2 Audubon president, I will ask City Council to, even though it's already been said that the land is not going to be sold, we still ask that you remember that any major steps toward a sale are subject to full California Environmental Quality Act review and are not exempt from it. A categorical exemption from the land sale is not appropriate because the subject parcels contain substantial areas of riparian and wetland habitat, and the adjacent river is also habitat for state and federally protected salmon. Delaying the required California Environmental Quality Review until after the sale agreement is approved by the city is counter to CEQA and its guidelines. Win2 Audubon asserts that before the city can further consider entering of a purchase sale agreement, the California Environmental Quality Act scoping process must be undertaken by the city to define the scope of environmental review and the appropriate programmatic level of review. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Ms. Land, followed by John Wilson, followed by Randy Slaughter.
Good evening. I have to apologize right up front because I haven't been able to attend all of the meetings. I attended the second part of the second one because I have other commitments, but I was hoping that you guys could entertain me and answer a few of my questions. At what point in the process would you declare the property surplus? Would that be up front or after the master plan, or like what point in the process?
You mean legally? And I might refer to City Attorney Duval. But
I can just take a note of the questions, and then when the speakers are done, if at the council's desire, we can answer those.
It's because it depends is the sort of the answer.
Okay, great. So the next question, if you do declare it surplus, that means that you'd be obligated to sell it, correct?
No.
No. Okay. And what does that, does that obligate you to anything? Okay, all right.
I'm sorry. Anything was it? I'm sorry.
But we can answer that once the speakers are done.
Okay.
There's a little bit of
Okay, great. And I was wondering what time frame that would be that you would be obligated to do whatever you'd be obligated to do. how would you maintain any control over development on the property if you did sell it? You know, what conditions of sale? I mean, would you guys have the ability, and this is a question for your attorney, but would you guys have the ability to have conditions of sale that would in fact protect, you know, anything, or you know, allow you to continue to have specific input that would be relevant to the community? So that's a question. And then how will you include additional stakeholders like Cool April Nights or the tribal interests? I'm just wondering, formally, how do you intend to include them as stakeholders?
I don't know if I can speak for the entire council, but likely that would happen during any sort of planning process should the city enter into any sort of planning process.
Okay. And then I just have a couple of comments. I have to say that I was here for Populus's presentation, and I have to say that I was completely skeptical of this whole thing. Oh, sorry. Oh, I have 30 seconds. Okay. But I have to say that I was very impressed. I'm an engineer, and I'm impressed with them and you know, with what they've done around the world, and I can envision that what they could do for us would be pretty awesome, you know, as long as all the stakeholders are involved. And really quickly, you know, I don't think we're going to be able to take advantage of the stimulus money. I don't know if somebody can analyze that, but I don't think we'll be able to. And my main concern is that, you know, that we don't lose access, the public access. If we sell the property, the private entity could, you know, reduce our access. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you. John Wilson, followed by Randy Slaughter, followed by Charles W.
Good evening, everyone. John Wilson. I probably has been to many city council meetings as anybody sitting in here over 50 years. But just had a couple of things, and I really want to seriously compliment you on the openness of this procedure, because in my life I've seen a lot of them that weren't nearly as open, believe me.
Thank you.
And I have one thing that I want to interject here, and I believe that Ms. Winter is going to have to recuse herself from the vote on this because of her affiliations involved with some of the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Slaughter, followed by Charles W., followed last and not least, Jim Garman.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, City Council, City Admin. First, I think this proposal to master plan the riverfront area in question is a no-brainer and should move forward in a responsible manner. I was not born and raised in Redding, and I've been here for 7 years. I'm building a life here. I'm bringing friends and family from out of the area here, and I'm giving back to a community that I love and believe has great potential. I may not be born and raised here, but I do know that my future children will be born here, and my husband and I will raise them here, and they deserve to have the best amenities available to them. My parents want to move up here from the Bay Area, but something is holding them back. Mostly it's access to some much-needed medical care, but ultimately it is the fact that there are more options and opportunities where they are now. Redding has the opportunity to do something about this, a golden opportunity. The rodeo, the Civic, and the events held in that area are special, but they could be extraordinary. It is time Redding became more than just the same old thing and takes a chance to reach for the stars, and I truly believe that this proposal with this team will set the standards for future planning and development in this city. My time spent in the area is few and far between. Most of it is when we decide to have a date night or attend an event at the Civic. I've been to the rodeo, and I enjoy it. But I've only been there like once in the 7 years that I've lived here. In fact, a girlfriend of mine, sadly, did not know that the rodeo grounds existed. I believe this would change, and even more people would frequent this area if it were more accessible, upgraded, and had the ability to hold more unique events, and if it were transformed into a multi-level or multi-use event space. The Civic needs help as well. While I enjoy a concert there every once in a while, in certain areas the acoustics aren't that great, and that affects my willingness to purchase a ticket. At the same time, working in the corporate world, I have attended summits and retreats that host over thousands of attendees with breakout spaces and the ability to hold a spectacular reception in the same venue after a keynote speaker. Our Civic doesn't allow for that right now. This could be a game changer in and of itself. That's hotel rooms being used, catering needed, groups going out downtown after the first day of speakers. That's all happening in Redding. Populous, K2 development companies, and the McConnell Foundation have the tools, the resources, and the knowledge to properly move this project forward in a responsible and incredible way. I am 33 years old. I'm going to have kids here in the near future, and along with my friends who are working and giving back to this community, it is our generation and our children's generations that will be able to look back at this moment and know Redding did something great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charles W., followed by Tim Garman.
Mayor and council, thank you for your time this evening. As parents, you tell your kids when they bring home assignments, do your homework. As kids, when we got into college and high school and everything else that we pursued after that, we had to remind ourselves, do your homework. We are in a situation as a city, and everybody in this chamber can speak to it, that we are thinking with our hearts and missing some things with our head because we haven't necessarily been doing all of our homework. Regarding the meetings that have been had and the paperwork that we've now seen, the bigger stakeholders that have been identified in this particular interest of this development have suddenly in a week's time been given enough homework to decide that they are willing to pursue this assignment. The chamber should be considering that as well. What was in their homework and what did they learn that we haven't been privy to yet, but that could be that persuasive and educationally important that they're willing to support the movement of progress for this whole development that we're discussing. Tonight, I would ask that everybody here take a minute to consider that what is being put on the table that we're all discussing so passionately amongst homework and amongst the city and everything else that we need to be researching right now extensively is the simple fact that the discussion for tonight is just to move forward to look at what this plan is going to be. They only want everybody here to be willing to talk about this. The master plan is part one. People want results, people want development, people want plans, people want research. People want us to do our homework. That's fine. Let them do the homework. Let the council vote on this to move the plan forward so we, the public, can get more homework assignments. We, the public, can get answers to all of these questions that we all have that make this city important and also make this development an absolute process that has to have all of us involved. That's my favorite part of group projects in school, is that we all get to do the homework and then we get to see the result of it. Right now, the council is asking that this plan moves forward with just the initial phase to see what is going to become of that area. A lot of people have spoke with the concern for the actual process maybe preventing us from having a say in it. If we approve this initial phase, then we get more homework and we get to give back to the council and the groups involved their homework. And then we get to really see what this plan for development could actually be. But none of that gets to happen if everybody doesn't support this initiative to simply start. That's when we get our group forums, that's when we get our footing, and we, the public, are allowed to see what homework the city council and the mayor and these development groups and everybody else are bringing to the table. So I leave you with that this evening. Go home and do your homework.
Dear sir, I hope you're a teacher. Tim Garman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. I didn't come here tonight to speak. I came here to listen and kind of see what this was about. But after hearing some stuff, I decided I needed to say a couple things. First of all, I grew up off of Jellies Ferry Road in a 32-acre little ranch that my parents and grandparents had. My grandmother took us fishing all the time in the North State, grew up to love the outdoors, something I passed along to my children. When my kids were young, every weekend in the summer, we would go find a different stream or a creek somewhere and go play in the stream, pick blackberries. We love the nature that this place provides. There's not much more beautiful area than Shasta County in general, as far as the outdoors go. And I think we need to really think about keeping that area free like that, keeping it open, so our kids can get out there and play that way. We don't need that much infrastructure down there. It's just, we don't. And Don't get me wrong. My dad took me to see Johnny Cash at the Civic Auditorium, one of the only great memories I have with my dad. So it is special that way. I've seen fireworks down there, but we don't need to modernize it to the point where it's becoming the San Antonio Riverwalk or anything like that. This almost feels to me like it's a modern-day land grab. It's just, I would caution you to take some more time on this. Don't act right away. Maybe have a couple more of these meetings. Show us a better plan. I didn't see a plan up there that showed much. So that's just kind of my takeaway from it for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who I didn't call before I close public comment? All right. I have one more. I know you guys have a list of questions, but I have one more question that was emailed to me today that I thought was really helpful. Are we at a point in the process of asking whether we all agree to this development, to develop this land in a specific way? Or are we at the stage of the process of saying, let's explore the potential ideas that Populous K2 and McConnell may have for this land? I think that that's really important for the community. I thought it was great and important for the community. What stage are we at?
I think you're in the latter stage. And if you'd like, I can maybe go through a list of some legal things that came up during the process of tonight's meeting. Surplus Land Act. First, to answer the most important question, I think, is that the Surplus Land Act requires that any public entity, before it sells property, declare property either surplus or exempt surplus. And when you do that, you have to, for surplus property, you have to offer it to affordable housing providers first. So they get a first right of refusal. And so the Housing and Community Development Department in Sacramento has a list of who those providers are, and they have a right. They've got 60 days to put their hat in the ring to say they want to negotiate. Our obligation, if somebody does that, and we've surplused a fair amount of property here in this community, and nobody's actually done that. But should that occur, then we have 90 days in which to come to terms. We have to negotiate in good faith. So if that occurs, that's another 90-day window. And if ultimately you can't come to terms with that affordable housing provider, or also I should make a note, in this case, the county, because it's actually, these are park facilities, so we would have to give the opportunity to county. If you can't come to terms, you can't come to terms, and then at that juncture, the city council would be at liberty to sell to another or do nothing or whatever that may be. So that's the timing. Once again, you're not obligated to sell the property to an affordable housing provider. Sure, they could make an argument that we didn't negotiate in good faith if the deal falls apart, and that could become a legal issue, but there is no flat obligation that, yes, you must sell to anybody, any affordable housing provider that puts their hat in the ring. So I think that handles that one. How do you direct the projects? Let's assume that there is a project, it's surplus, and the property becomes available to negotiate with any party, including those that have provided the unsolicited offer. There's lots of ways you control that. So you could put conditions in the contract that certain things have to occur. Development of the property has to look like this. It has to look like that. If it doesn't, we get the property back. Or if there doesn't, we have an opportunity to jump in the process again and direct it. There's things you can do both by zoning, and that's where the master plan becomes very important, or by contract. So it's not really the situation that if the property gets sold that the community just loses all control as to what that the ultimate conclusion of what that property may look like in the future, because that shouldn't be the case, and I don't think it's anybody's intention that that would be the case. Next thing, recusals came up. Recusals under California law, conflicts of interest law, you have to look for a financial effect for any council member to be recused from a matter. And so if there's no financial impact in the decision to basically your own wallet book, it's not a conflict of interest. So religious affiliation doesn't count. Membership on a nonprofit board doesn't count. Those are not conflicts of interest. Last thing, CEQA happens when we know what a project is. So yeah, I mean, there's going to have to be some consideration of CEQA, but one of the frequent comments tonight is that, well, there's no definition to what's going to happen there, and that's a problem. Exactly. That's the point. You can't do CEQA until you know what the project is. You have to, because you're addressing impacts when you do CEQA, and the project is the thing that creates the impact. So you have to know what the project is, and then you can do CEQA. And with that, I think I'm done.
City Manager Tippin, did you have any questions to answer?
No, I would probably drone on as well, so.
Sounds like an attorney joke. Councilmember Winter.
Thank you. I have quite a few comments to make, so bear with me. I'm going to have to read some of them. Just lots of thoughts. This is an incredible opportunity tonight, and as I speak to my fellow council members, my hope tonight is that we just honestly talk through this and hopefully come up with a unanimous decision. I think that's important. As one speaker said, we are at the tip of the iceberg. There's no decision tonight to sell land. We are not making a decision tonight to sell land or be contracted to sell land. And I just want to put that out there right up front. And we can, as our attorney said, we can put many covenants, we can put many things in contract, including public access. All of the things that you have mentioned that you're concerned about tonight can be put into contract. I want to thank you all for attending the workshops, and I'm so happy to see so many Native American voices here tonight. And I want to just publicly state that it's critical as we move forward that you have a voice. You are part of our stakeholders. We want to hear you. How do we make this space better? How do we make sure we protect that riverfront area and protect the salmon and the birds and the nesting areas? I think that's important for all of us. And I would just want to say I was never elected by any special interest group, and I wear a lot of hats, but more than anything, I'm a mom. And I have kids and I have grandkids here, and it breaks my heart that one of my sons left the area because he couldn't make his dreams come true here. And some of my grandchildren don't live here, and probably some of you have that same story because we don't have enough to hold people. We can't recruit many of the professionals here. And I want to create a better future for all of our kids, my kids, your kids, all of our Native American children. We want to make sure that we have this amazing place. I think we all want that. We all want to protect our riparian habitats and many of the natural things, but we also want places where the community can gather. And I agree with Steve Williams. I thank him for coming. I don't know if he's still here tonight, and I think it was his grandfather that helped to build the Civic. And the Civic, the original Civic built in the 60s, it took 14 years. There were a lot of naysayers. It was a long process. This right here tonight is a long process. We are at the very beginning of deciding, are we going to move forward with planning? That's all we're basically just deciding tonight. And I want to make sure too that we need to remember that the assets down there, the Civic, the rodeo grounds, those structures are aging, and they could be a lot better utilized than they are, and they need millions of dollars for refurbishment, and that weighs on us as a council. How are we going to make a plan for the future? Are we going to kick the can down the road to another council on how are we going to keep those facilities open? And I think the decision before the council tonight is probably one of the most important decisions this council will make. And I want to make sure that we don't make a decision out of fear and that we don't cause any unnecessary delay that might cause this incredible opportunity that's before us to vanish. I don't know how many times I've been asked by citizens, what are you going to do with our riverfront? What can we do with our riverfront? How can we make that a place, as Mr. Lockwood said, where people love to be together? This is the heart of our city, but really the significant daily activity that happens down there is at the bridge in the Turtle Bay complex. When you drive down there, you don't see people on the civic grounds typically, or on the rodeo grounds unless there's an event. Those areas are pretty much vacant, and that is our living room. I want there to be places where we love to hang out, where we love to gather, where children are playing, and that really isn't happening now. We've heard about the importance of our heritage, our Native American heritage, our rodeo heritage, and the importance of preserving these riparian areas. And all of this can be done. I met with David Ledger. We walked to that area and we talked about ways, maybe there's things that we could even do better with this master planning to make those riparian areas even better than they are now. And I'm thinking, as I'm hearing some of the Wintu speak, what are some ways that we can recognize our Wintu heritage as we move forward? This doesn't have to be, if we do this, we can't do that. That's why we need your voices. I did take the time to meet with Julia Cronin, who's an archaeologist with Turtle Bay, and another archaeologist from the Shasta Historical Society, to talk about sensitive Native American areas in this particular place. And there are, across the river, definitely villages that were there. There were over on the other side of the bridge, burial sites. The particular site specifically where the Civic is, or the rodeo grounds, there's no evidence that there were burial grounds or an actual village there, because it was flooded. It was a flooded area. It was before the bridge was built. That area was flooded routinely, and there was a sawmill there which got flooded so many times they abandoned it. So, but that doesn't mean that the river area is not sensitive to our Wintu Native American population. And so, pulling their voices in, I think, is going to be important. And I want to just say that we make it clear we are not approving the sale of this property tonight, and we may never approve the sale of any property. Tonight is simply about how do we move forward with the process to have you help us make a plan. No, there is no plan, because you are going to make it. We are going to make the plan together, and I believe in this community. I believe we can actually do that. So as I'm looking at the options that our city manager presented to the council, I would like us to consider options, kind of a hybrid combination, because I believe we could do that. Options number 4 and number 5, and number 5 automatically includes number 2, because you have to continue to look at these properties. But I don't want to delay the process. So I have no issue with declaring this surplus, because at any point along the way, if we don't get an offer we want, there will be a way to pull out of that. But I also would like us to consider option 4, where perhaps, and I think these two could run concurrently. I'll ask our city manager, but where we could be looking at other alternatives where perhaps we don't have to declare this surplus. Perhaps we can go forward with public-private partnership. But I don't want to explore that for 2 months and delay this, because I am concerned that this opportunity, particularly with Populous, could disappear. So I would like us to consider declaring this surplus. Thank you.
All right, I'll bring it back to
And I'd love your thoughts.
Or is there a member of the council who has any thoughts? Councilmember Schrader. So, the gentlemen are going to point over here. That's the deal.
Oh, I'll take it. Thank you. We all appreciate the time that you all invested in following the workshops. I think we made, I believe, and I've done this a little while, in addressing public meetings, that I think our intention was always done in good faith, that we received, and it can't be overstated, it was an unsolicited offer. And I think that every step of the way, with our staff and our council, we approached this in a good faith way and said, okay, from the very beginning, when our mayor took it off of what was a closed session, we never discussed it in a closed session. Every conversation we had was in open session, where everybody could see and hear everything that was being discussed. And so I want to remind everybody that, because there have been times when people come in and say, there's not enough transparency, we didn't hear enough. In the 7 years I've been on the council, the amount and the ability for our staff and our council to be able to communicate out to the public has quadrupled. We have so many opportunities now to communicate through, and I know some people said, well, they didn't hear about it, and I'm sorry that they didn't, but there were a lot of press releases. Right now, I think we're up to, not just on this topic, we're up to 40 plus podcasts, and some of them are 40 minutes long, where you're hearing every detail about what is surplus. I mean, you can go and hear Mr. DeWalt, Mr. Tippin talk, and then replay. If you didn't hear all the information, replay it again. What did they say about surplus? What does that actually mean? And they've described it in 2 different sections of the podcast. And there are, if you click on our website, our volumes of information. This is just today's agenda that includes, a compilation of all of the workshops, information that went to the workshops. We have received probably hundreds of emails. I think that the staff right now are going through the process of compiling the survey results. There were surveys that you could access and provide your input through a survey process on each workshop, after each workshop, and they're compiling the results of those. So at every point, we are attempting to be, and I believe we achieve the goal of being transparent. Everything you see here is whatever there is. And I want to talk just about the planning. And I appreciate one of our last speakers talk about doing our homework. And that's what we all do all the time. That's our job, we hope to ask the right questions and be mindful that people have different opinions, but it's our job to get the best information that we can, do our homework. And so some of the people write in an email or say here tonight, well, there is no plan, that's a problem. And then some people say, well, there is a plan and I don't like it. But I'll say it again, there is no plan. There's a concept, and I think a couple of people said it well, that it's the starting point with a concept, and then you do a plan. And as Mr. DeWalt reminded us, we can't do CEQA until we have a plan. And I appreciate Mr. Lockwood has described, and to remind everybody, I'm kind of doing trying to catch up on everything, and respond to some emails that we received and also what was said here tonight to try and answer some of those questions as I'm talking. So I appreciate Mr. Lockwood talking about, and I think he said it every time, and I'll remind you why we invited him, the team, every time, was to hear, if you missed it the first time, you could see another presentation. And we asked them to do that. It wasn't that we're promoting that idea and only that idea. It was to give the opportunity for people to hear it. You could also watch it on TV, live streamed. You can go back and watch it if you want. It's available. But one of the things in the visual that I appreciated, because I'm a Giants fan, and I enjoy the stadium down there and how much access they designed in the development. And you think about that when you're there, that is a wonderful place to be. And I did not know you could actually see the game from the boardwalk next to the bay, so I think, and with his connection to the community, that is a value. If Populous can build or design anywhere in the world, and someone comes to Redding and says, well, have you thought about this? And we hadn't. We're fortunate that we have people like Carl Williams in our history that had vision and dreamt, had a dream. And it took him, as Councilmember Winter said, 14 years, a lot of obstacles. But it started with a dream. It started with an idea. And that's where we have to think about, how do you get started with an idea? And this is the way we can do it. If we look back, that we are now looking back, and thank you to Laura Chrisman, who wrote this wonderful article for the Shasta Historical Society that was in the 2020 or 2021 version about just the development of the Civic Auditorium. Oh my gosh. It was amazing what people went through. And that's how you start. I'm going to finish with a couple more things about how did we start with other projects. Downtown. I think downtown, the first idea that begun with some planning money a grant from Shasta Regional Transportation Agency, and I think it was, forgive me if I got this wrong, 2016. It's now 5 years later, and people now look and say, wow, what else can we do with downtown? Look what's happened with just downtown. The Posse Grounds boat ramp. The city of Redding is using grant money to design and improve the access there. Mindful that is so important for our community. And it's one of those areas that had little red X's on there that we would not dispose of. So we have taken the opportunity when we have received grant money. The $20 million we got from the Strategic Growth Council was an investment into our downtown that has just reaped wonderful rewards. And we haven't even seen the end of it yet. And that's a partnership with McConnell, K2, and the city of Redding. So there is just the beginning of this process is what we can look back years from now and say, yes, these were tough choices, but we started with a plan and we're not sure where it's going to go, but we need to have the ability to start and the ability to move forward and work with the community. Amazing stakeholder contributions is what we need, and we can do the surplus property parallel that process. As Mr. DeWalt has said at least 4 times, it doesn't require us to sell anything at the end. And I want to just remind people, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I kind of feel like sometimes we need to remind people. And the last, I will say this, the last thing I'm myself and Council Member Mazzano represent the City of Redding on the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency Board, and the Executive Director, Dan Little, asked me to read a portion. I'm going to read a portion of the letter that they wrote to a remark on the proposed project. And the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency has a long history of transportation investments in and around the Turtle Bay area. And the Northern Riverfront proposal, or efforts like it, will include transportation planning and funding proposals which will align with CERTA's past and future efforts. Whatever Redding decides, CERTA will continue to support a transportation solution for the area. So I hope our council can find a way to work together, work with our community, and invest in what is possible. That sometimes we don't even know what the exact plans are right now. Sounds kind of, could have people be fearful, but I hear people are fearful, but I also hear people have a lot of hope. And that's what we want to try and, we want to focus on the hope.
Thank you very much. City Manager Tippin.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to verify what Vice Mayor Schrader indicated, and that is that the surveys from the previous workshops are all up on our website, as well as 209 pages worth of emails that the City Council has received. So if you want to read all of the emails that the Council has read, those are posted up there on a PDF document.
Thank you very much. Prior to making any comments to either...
I wanted to... I'm sorry, I wanted to amend my motion to specifically state that we would exclude the riparian areas. We'd only include the civic and rodeo grounds as was on the map. So that was that. And the other comment I wanted to make about planning is you can master plan and plan the whole area until the cows come home. But if you don't actually have a plan that pencils, like we could come up with all kinds of great ideas that we would want to have down there, but actually has to pencil, like it has to be financially sustainable. And you have to have capital to be able to build it. And so what I appreciate about the proposal that we have is that we have a group that is going to totally include the community, but master plan in a sustainable way. Whatever we do down there has to be able to, it's going to have to be able to pencil, it's going to have to be able to take care of itself, and we actually need a group like Populous that can bring in help us to bring in the funding to build it. Because I don't want a plan that it's all great, we stick it up on a shelf and it gathers dust, and then we're still stuck with these aging assets. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Do either gentleman on the council
yes.
have a thought or opinion? I'm attempting to be polite.
I am the newest member to this council, and I got 3 more years to go, and I hope all the decisions aren't this hard. Gosh, the hundreds of emails that we've gotten from people, and I think most of them are formulated based on a lack of knowledge on their part. I mean, for weeks now we've heard about the riparian areas, and there's never been a mention of that. For the record, I'll answer the questions that were posed. I will not support anything that affects the riparian areas, period. I will not support anything that affects the 73-year history of the rodeo. I think it belongs in this town. I will not support anything that restricts access to the public. And finally, if you look at this as an opportunity to improve the quality of life here in Redding, you ask yourself, is this going to happen if we proceed forward? Well, I think if you go to the rodeo, you are improving the quality of your life. And then the work that Advanced Redding does to bring entertainment to this community and the various trade shows and whatnot are also working towards improving the quality of life. The workshops, though, have been about the process to do this. There haven't been any workshops on what the people want. And I know that's going to come if we move forward, and that's how Populous works. And I would say that I have the utmost confidence in Populous to deliver what they say they deliver, or what we want them to deliver as a result of workshops with you, the people. My wife and I walk that river trail twice a week, minimum. And the value is priceless for the time that you have to reflect on life and what we have there. I don't see this project, now that we've put that graphic up there, where we've taken some of the property out of the mix, affecting the river in such a way to prohibit it. But I also learned during this process that this land was purchased with a vote of the people. And I'm not convinced that it should be brought back before the people to see if they want to sell it. We make the decisions on the council, but it's not about what I want. It's about what the people want. And for them to bring their ideas forward, do I think this brings economic relief to this community? Absolutely. We have 1,000 employees in this city departments, and we're losing them. We can't hire them because we don't pay enough in comparison to the other cities around us. So our employees are leaving, and we want the best employees to deliver the best services to you, the people. And how do you do that? Do you want to raise the taxes? Nobody wants to do that. So we do things like this that will bring more economic value to our community. It brings the tourism in. It brings opportunities for those of us that live and work here to take advantage of the ideas that you're going to bring forward and hopefully come to fruition. I would say that without a doubt, the indigenous people need to be included in this. They bring value, they bring history, and they bring a genuine desire to make this area better, as their ancestors did. So I guess I would say that knowing that if we do move forward and agree to declare it surplus property, we're not stuck. We're not signing a contract that says, all right, we got to do it. Because I am concerned about affordable housing in this area. I don't know that it's the right place for it at this time, but I've seen the affordable housing that we have in this area in the city of Redding, and I'm most impressed with it, and I'm most impressed with what K2 Development has done for our affordable housing. And some of it is on the expensive side, but it's still affordable for certain people. We need to focus on that a little bit more in our community. And if we can draw more people up here, as we've said, as Councilwoman Winters has said, that her son left because he couldn't fulfill his dreams here. We need to make that possible. We need to work as a group to make that possible. And as we said at the last meeting, why can't you people get on the same page? And I had lunch with with Advanced Redding, and we talked about it, and I've talked with the rodeo people, and they had a meeting, and they were all in a room, and I don't know if they sang Kumbaya, but they came away with this letter and an idea that they can all work together for the betterment of our community, which is going to improve the quality of life. So it was a decision that I struggle with at this point. Thank you.
Councilmember DeQuista.
Thank you very much. This is probably the hardest decision that has been presented to me in my time on the council, and probably the other council members feel the same. And I can see both sides to the argument of whether you should go forward or you shouldn't go forward. Taking a bigger overview of it, the entire process to me seems rushed. It seems like it's not necessarily been shoved down our throats, but it's not like the property is blighted. It's not like there's code enforcement officers over there, and it's not like it's going to fall down tomorrow. So to say we need to do this quickly, given what's been provided, I have some hesitation with that. And the second observation I have, and I'll preface it with saying, I'm a Turtle Bay member. I've been forever and ever. Family member. We go there. I support the projects the McConnell Foundation has done. They have given lots of money away that is not publicized. They benefit all kinds of people in the community, and I'm sure that they think they're doing the best that Carl and Leah McConnell would want them to do with the money. Having said that, the other reality that they face is that they're required to spend a certain amount of their income every year. If they don't invest and have the income grow, they'll be out of business at some point in time. And it's nothing wrong with trying to invest in properties to keep the philanthropy part of the business going. So I understand all that. Having said that, and don't take this the wrong way, the offer is smoke and mirrors. And the reason that it's smoke and mirrors is because they've had 4 opportunities to present a plan. This goes back to the first or second speaker, Senator Johansson. What is the plan? Now, they don't have it. And they say, well, the plan is whatever you want. Okay, if the plan is whatever we want, why doesn't McConnell front the $1 million, hold the public meetings, come back and say, this is what we propose? We had a presentation here from Les Melberg for South City Park, and he put a little demo together over the course of a weekend with ball fields and other ideas that he had for this park. You can't tell me that they have no idea what they want. They have no idea where anything's going to be. They asked about the financing plan. They have no financing plan. I've been a member of the Shasta Angels Group, investor group, for 10 years or more. If someone came to us with this as a financial proposal, it would be a joke. I don't believe they're joking, but what I'm saying is it's way too early to sign an agreement, because what they want, here, this is what they want. They want an exclusive negotiating agreement, or as Mr. Knott said, they want site control. Now, I don't blame them for wanting site control. If I was in their position, I'd want site control too. But they want site control on a wish and a promise. Show us something. Go to the community. I'm glad they listened to me and listened to Mr. Mazzano and got everybody on board, but that shouldn't be our job. That should have been taken care of beforehand. They should go to Mr. Koutras and say, are you on behalf of your family content with us doing this? They should go to the Indian people and say, give us a representative so we can be on this too. It shouldn't be our job to have to do that. They're smart, intelligent people. They should go and do that. So what I believe is that we should take no action on the proposal as it's presented, give them an opportunity to come back. Maybe they'll listen to me again, maybe not, and say, we will front the money for the master plan. We will undertake it, and then we'll come back. They want us to trust them, and trust is okay, but trust is a two-way street. If they front the money, do they think we're going to sell the property in the meantime? It's not going to go anywhere. It's still going to be there. So it seems to me that the first thing, because what I've heard so far is, and there's been virtually no discussion of, should we even sell the property? Should we do this at all? And everybody, because if you take any of these other steps, they're first steps towards an ultimate sale or lease of the property. For the record, I am not in favor of selling any of the property. Long-term lease, which would guarantee income to the city, is a much better way to do it, and the city retains ownership, so there is no sale of the public property. I don't fault K2 or McConnell for trying to make $1. I don't fault Populous for it, and I believe they're all acting in good faith when they do this, but I don't think it's the right way to be at this particular time. I think they're valid environmental concerns. There's an issue with the general plan of the city of Redding that says our goal should be to increase riverfront access. Our goal should be to increase the riparian areas and those things like that. How does doing this fit into that general plan issue? I also raised in a Facebook post, and I would be willing to agree to abide by whatever vote the citizens say, because this is an important issue, and the vote is the vote. And will it cost money? Absolutely. Is it worth the money? Well, if it's going to be a $500 million project, it's worth McConnell's time if they think there's a way to make money in it to front $1 million for the master plan. It's worth the city's time to front $200,000 or $300,000 for an election and see what the citizens say, and that's truly the way that you can listen and decide. Will there be arguments? Of course. Are people going to disagree? Of course. Are things going to get misrepresented? That's the world we live in today. But I think it makes my job easier to do that. And so for people who have asked about how do we know what's going to happen, the bottom line is you have to trust the city council when these agreements come up and they're negotiated and they claim there'll be off-ramps in them, and there should be, and there are goals and markers you have to meet. And if you don't meet the marker, the agreement ends, but it has to be voted on by the city council. So you're going to have to trust that there'll be a majority on the city council that will represent your interest. There's no question about that. That's the way it goes. The council does have the authority to sell or lease the land, assuming you follow the certain steps and requirements that you have to go through. There's one other item, and under the Surplus Land Act, if you offer it to the housing people and they don't take it, and then you offer it to somebody else, if that person builds 10 units or more, you have to allocate 15% to affordable housing. Now, that may be good, that may be bad. I'm not speaking on it one way or the other, but that is a requirement in the law. So it's not as though if you don't do it, and it doesn't say when that requirement ends. So if you don't sell it to the first offer and somebody else comes along later, you may have to do it again. It's unclear. So it's not clear to me that there's a way to do this project without getting some money for affordable housing. K2 has done a lot so far, but they do it with affordable housing. That's how they got the money for downtown. That's what their expertise is. So that's why they brought in Populous, because they don't do affordable housing, they do convention centers. I will also state, I have a problem with the surplus land declaration. Surplus land means to me, and a woman read from the city ordinance, it's not being used. Well, if you have a lease with Advanced Redding, you're using the surplus land. If you have a lease with the Rodeo Association, you're using that land. How can you make a finding? I mean, you can make it. How can you say it's not being used, it's not necessary? It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not that you can't do it, but if you do that, you leave yourself open for legal challenge by opponents to the project who say, wait a minute, you declared it surplus, but it's not surplus because it was still being used. Even if the people using it say, we don't care. So it's a potential issue, and I don't think that's something the citizens should be exposed to in this particular thing. I will say finally that for the record, I liked your X's that you put on there. So I would agree that nothing should be done with those. If they have to be included in a master plan, that's one thing, but I would never vote to sell it or lease it or do anything with it like that. So I would make a motion that the council adopt item number 1, take no action, and see what response McConnell has to my proposal. And then after we get their response, if they say yes, that's great. If they say no, we can come back and then look at the rest of these. But I think that's the first step to take, because everybody else is saying essentially, well, let's not counter anything. Let's not do anything. Let's not negotiate. Let's just move forward as though we're going to accept what it is. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the citizens.
All right, so I have 2 motions on the table, but prior to taking those motions up for a vote, I'm really sorry that you have to hear us talk for an extended period of time, but we try and sit and listen for a long period of time and then share what it is that we are thinking and where it is that we come from. when this offer came in, and like City Manager Tippin said that it was unsolicited, I think that we should all just acknowledge that mistakes were made. And that I'm not sure that there can be the proverbial uncracking of an egg of distrust. And I think that with the community that it got off sort of onto the wrong foot. And I also, when you mentioned Levi Stadium, was reminded of Santa Clara University has a code of ethics for public servants. And one of those ethics is to err on the side of restoring and maintaining public trust. And so when I've been attempting to make decisions and thinking in the last 4 workshops, I've been thinking, what can we do here to restore public trust, especially within this process? City Manager Tippin gave a good idea this evening of mentioning Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. And if I'm not mistaken, the way in which that Santa Clara handled that was to form a plan, and they took it to once they had a plan, they took that plan to the people to vote on that plan. However, there is a part of me who, after we acknowledged that mistakes were made, also realized that this is an opportunity for us. This entire process is an opportunity for us to dream, an opportunity for us to share our vision for our community, the community that we will leave to our children's children. And I think that we all mentioned that this is one of the most difficult, the decisions that follow from here on forward are some of the most difficult decisions that we will make, because this is somewhat of a 300-year sort of decision. And I have often thought about, if someone had made the wrong decision in regards to Central Park, would it still be this gem within New York City? If that had been rushed, or that had been done wrong, or if all of the parties who needed to be engaged, or if it wasn't preserved in the right sort of way. So I understand that this has been a very confusing sort of process, but where I personally sit on this is that we have had to go through this process in order to engage. Up until this point in time, we have not been able to vet or negotiate with said parties to see whether or not they're even people that parties that we would like to form a plan with, or that we would like to develop prior to taking the next steps. Like some of the other city council members, the goal here really was to, how do we engage the public and be the most transparent and figure out who should be involved, because I believe that this entire city council, it was very important to them for transparency and engagement within the community. And whatever decision is made, I think that that is the most important thing for our for this council, from what I have heard tonight and prior to this, of how is it that we engage the public, and how do we move forward and make sure that there is an independent way in which that the actual desires of this community are put into any sort of plan or any sort of vision that is cast for the future. And then how do we give teeth to that plan, so that we can make sure that if there's a plan and everyone weighs in, that actually happens. And so those are my comments. And the way in which this goes is that Councilmember DeQuisto made a second motion, and so I need to see whether or not there is a second for Councilmember DeQuisto's motion of take no action. All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
No. Motion fails. We have a prior. 2, 3.
Okay, I would like to have Councilmember Winter kind of re-clarify her motion, because I think I understand it, and if we could have her clarify it, and I would be open to supporting that motion.
Well, I do like the idea of staff on number 4, having staff explore other alternatives other than declaring this surplus property, and bring that back in, and in succession, running parallel to that, to go ahead and declare this surplus property for the 60 days. The likelihood of somebody coming in with an affordable housing project is just about nil, if ever, because this land would be very expensive and the infrastructure to build that isn't likely. So I'm not concerned that we're going to get an offer for affordable housing in this area. So, so I'd like to have those kind of running together, so then we have more information on making that decision. Perhaps we will not even have to declare this surplus property if there are other options for us. But if we do, we haven't delayed the process of moving forward with declaring this surplus property and starting the process of, as you said, planning. We want to hear from the community. We want planning to occur. So that's my motion, that we do 4 and 5. And number 5, actually, Mr. Tippin, you can correct me, also includes number 2, directing staff to continue developing information regarding the subject properties.
Does anyone have any questions for that motion prior to me asking a question? I am wondering whether or not you would consider delaying the surplus portion of that and consider a motion in which that we made a motion for number 2 and number 4 to be included, so that we direct staff to research alternatives which would allow development and improvements without declaring surplus property, as well as direct staff to continue developing City Manager Tippin, go ahead.
So just a matter of how this process would roll out based on Councilman Member Winter's idea. You are not declaring surplus tonight.
Right.
So all you would be doing is directing staff to go develop the resolution and the staff report necessary for declaring surplus. That would not be back before you until December 21st, just given the time frames between now and then, which we would have 6 weeks or so of opportunity to do a fair amount of research on, you know, what other cities have done and that sort of stuff. And we'd be able to present maybe not a complete package of other alternatives and ideas, but we certainly would have a fair amount of information at that point. And on the December 21st meeting, you would have the opportunity to say, well, we're not ready to declare surplus now. We're going to push that off. Or you could declare it surplus at that time. So, you know, given if that motion were to pass, it still does not require you to declare surplus come December 21st. It gives you the full opportunities to pursue whichever direction you wish at that time.
Go ahead, Councilmember Rosano.
Question for you, Mr. Tippin. If I like this is a good idea here. Would we be able to use that new system that Director Niemeyer showed us the other night? That was very detailed on surveying the constituents as to what they wanted.
Yeah, the survey. So if the council wanted us to continue the survey, so the ones that have been posted are using that system. So the surveys off the 3 workshops are utilizing that same system. If the council wanted us to continue to push out that sort of information and have that information come back to City Council, we certainly can do that. We don't really need that to be included in the motion. I mean, that certainly could just be council members' desire, or it could be included in the motion either way.
That would be great, and staff is doing a good job putting this out there. I saw the advertisement for tonight's meeting on Channel 7. If we could enlist them a little bit to help promote our survey program, it might get more response. And then when we tabulate the results, we'll know where we stand.
City Manager Tippin, what do you have in brought up?
Well, I just thought we could bring up, you know, the webpage. So it shows down there to the bottom. If you scroll down, community feedback. So there's the survey responses. Just click on workshop 3 or 2 or 1, doesn't matter. So it has, you know, the information about what the questions were and what the responses were, and, you know, so we can continue that work. And I think should the council direct anything associated with moving forward, aside with don't do anything, we would continue that engagement with the community and continue to get that feedback, because I think it's valuable for the council.
Councilmember Winter, do you have any thoughts on my thought? We can discuss, but I'm just wondering whether or not you have thoughts, opinions there.
I think it's great to pursue both, because we aren't declaring surplus tonight, but I would like to have the information on that. I'd like to have the information on other options so that we're not limited the next time we discuss this.
I appreciate and support the idea of us not being limited on what our options are. However, I do really think that what you said before in terms of us being a united front, and if that means that we slow down so that potentially we can be a united front, then I'm okay with us making sure that we're going about this in a slow way, if that makes sense. Because I believe that during those meetings, we would still, when you bring back items 4 and 2, that we would still have the opportunity to say, all right, it looks like that there's not a viable option that does not include declaring surplus, and then the council has the opportunity at that time to make that decision. That's my thought. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I am going to take a stab at this. I would like to see us vote on Councilmember Winter's proposal, and because I do see that we have off ramps, and at any point we can. I'm going to back up. I like the idea of having both options, going parallel, and I see that as a benefit rather than a risk. So that's why I'm going to support I'll second the motion, and ask for a vote, and realizing that it still has to be voted on in December. We have time to gather more information, and we always want feedback. And I think we're still trying to figure out how we can get the most amount of feedback, and because remember, we don't have a plan, and that's okay. That's okay. We need to get to the point where we have more information to allow the planning, and I like having both options and running in parallel. So I'm going to support the motion.
Councilmember Mazzano.
I just want to make sure that the motion doesn't include the vote for.
It can't.
Okay, I'm fine.
Let me clarify for the general public so that we can go back to what the motion currently is. It is items 2, 4, and 5. In regards to item 5, what will be required is that staff will have to direct staff to begin the process to surplus identified properties. Staff will have to bring that back to council. What did you say, December 16th, something?
Well, our plan would be December 21st.
Okay. December 21st, that would have to come back to council, and then council would have to take a vote of whether or not they were going to declare that surplus. Are there any other questions among the council prior to taking a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say aye. Say no.
Opposed for the reasons I stated before.
No. All right, passes. 3-2. Guys, thank you so much for sitting for an extended period of time, for showing up, for engaging in the public. Thank you for every single person who wrote us an email. We do read them all.
All 209 of them.
All 209 of them. And we do attempt to reply to those. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.